Chapter 2579. Mountain River Ancestor. Have you guys heard? The seal on Boundless Taishu has been lifted. I heard that the flaming bug that caused a commotion in Boundless Taishu has been taken away. Really? Who took it away? Why isn't there any news about it? It's strange. I heard that Old Man Heifu had gathered the Blood Divine Hall, Purple Cloud Hall, and 10 other top-ranked halls to find the bug and encircle it. In the end, the 10 great halls and Old Man Heifu went missing. It's said that they've all fallen, and the flaming bug has mysteriously disappeared. No way. It's so strange. Who took the flaming bug? I'm not sure about this either. Since the seal on Boundless Taishu has been lifted, it means that the flaming bug is no longer in Boundless Taishu. As for where it went, I don't know either. The 2 cultivators next to him started chatting because they were bored. They talked about the flaming bug in Boundless Taishu. Crepe Myrtle Star Monarch glanced at the calm Zhuowen and thought to himself, if these 2 know that the culprit who stole the bug is right next to them, what kind of expression would they have? When Lan Ji heard the conversation between the 2, he couldn't help but glance at Zhuowen. He remembered that the time when the flaming bug was taken away seemed to coincide with the time when the white-clothed young man in front of him came out of Boundless Taishu. Lan Ji suspected that the flame bug had been taken away by his master. If it was really his master who had done it, Lan Ji would be even more in awe. He knew that the fall of Old Man Heifu and the 10 great halls was likely related to his master. Whether it was the Blood Divine Hall, Purple Cloud Hall, or the other halls, they were not weaker than Lan Chi Hall. Among them, Old Man Heifu's name reverberated like thunder in Lan Ji's ears. If all of these people had fallen because of his master, then Lan Ji really couldn't imagine how powerful his master was. The auction is about to start. Look, the Mountain River Hall master has come out too. Suddenly, the originally quiet surroundings became noisy and noisy. Then, everyone looked forward and saw 3 figures walking over from the high platform. Among the 3 people, one of them was very old. His aura was not strong, and he was wearing formal clothes. He was clearly the auctioneer sent by the Mountain River Hall. The aura of the second person was robust, and he was at the prime of his life. His gaze was bright like lightning, and it seemed as if it contained blazing light that could swallow the sun and moon. The third person looked like an ordinary old man. He wore training clothes and had his hands behind his back. He coughed violently from time to time, as if he was about to enter a coffin. The moment these 3 people appeared, everyone's eyes were surprisingly focused on the ordinary-looking old man. Their eyes were all filled with reverence. My lord, that old man is the patriarch of Mountain River Hall. Although he has not appeared in public for a long time, he was famous before he went into seclusion. He challenged many experts, and many experts know him. Lan Ji explained to Zhuowen. Zhuowen nodded, and his sharp gaze fell on the patriarch of Mountain River Hall. Although the patriarch of Mountain River Hall looked like an ordinary old man, Zhuowen could feel a shocking power in his body. Ha ha! Thank you for coming to the Mountain River Hall. This 100-hall auction will not disappoint you. The middle-aged man's voice was like thunder. When he spoke, it was like rolling thunder. He cupped his hands at the people below. The people below quickly cupped their hands and returned the greeting. The middle-aged man was the current Mountain River Hall master, Su Yangqi. Su Yangqi returned the greeting and then retreated behind the patriarch of Mountain River. Obviously, the patriarch of Mountain River Hall had something to say. The patriarch of Mountain River Hall coughed a few times. Then, his slightly turbid eyes slowly scanned the surroundings. Finally, his gaze fell on the place where the Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign was, and he ignored him. After the patriarch of Mountain River Hall retracted his gaze, he slowly opened his mouth and said, I am Su Liang. Perhaps many of you have heard of me, and perhaps some of you have not. However, that is not important. Today, I, Su Liang, only have one purpose in attending this auction. That is to see the fellow Taoist who obtained the flame worm. As long as you are willing to exchange the flame worm with me, I am willing to pay any price to exchange it with you. As soon as these words came out, the people in the square were in an uproar and looked at each other. No one expected Su Liang to say such words. Could it be that Su Liang was so sure that the cultivator who obtained the flame worm had come to attend the auction? The crepe myrtle star sovereign revealed a trace of a bitter smile. He knew that Su Liang said this because he saw him. After Su Liang finished speaking, he looked at the crepe myrtle star sovereign and then walked down the high platform. He sat cross-legged on a praying mat not far away and closed his eyes to rest. Now let the auction begin. Next, our auctioneer will preside over it. Su Yangqi smiled and also left the high platform. The old man in formal clothes bowed to the crowd and began to preside over the auction. The auction proceeded in a lukewarm manner. The items that came out at the beginning were not too eye-catching, and there were very few bids. The next item to be presented is a Tao fruit. It is said that the auctioneer obtained it from a secret realm. I heard that a Tao-confirming expert once stayed in that secret realm. So he left behind a Tao fruit. I think everyone is clear about the value of this Tao fruit. The starting price is 5 million high-grade divine stones. Each bid must not be less than 10,000 high-grade divine stones. The auctioneer introduced the Tao fruit in detail with just a few words. As soon as the auctioneer finished speaking, the bidding became much more lively. Clearly, many cultivators were determined to obtain the Tao fruit. Zhuowen glanced at the Tao fruit indifferently and no longer paid attention to it. This Tao fruit was much worse than the Tao fruit he obtained from Ma Yujia. It couldn't enter his eyes at all, so he didn't bid at all. In the end, the Tao fruit was sold for 30 million high-grade divine stones. It was undoubtedly a sky-high price. The following items were more and more precious, which set off a wave of excitement. The bidding continued endlessly. During this time, the Purple Star Sovereign made a few bids. Unfortunately, the bids of the others were too high. In the end, the Purple Star Sovereign could only embarrass himself. The next item to be auctioned is a level 9 divine medicine. This divine medicine is called the 8 trigrams yang water. It can be considered an extremely precious type of level 9 divine medicine. The auctioneer's next words immediately attracted Zhuowen's attention. Zhuowen stared at the beautiful female cultivator, who was carrying a tray up from below. The auctioneer removed the red cloth on the tray, revealing the true appearance of the item inside. Above the tray, there was a palm-sized 8 trigrams array disc. A few inches above the center of the 8 trigrams array disc, there was a small blazing sun the size of 3 thumbs. Whether it was the 8 trigrams array disc or the small blazing sun, their surfaces pulsed with ripples like water. These two were actually formed from a mysterious type of water. Chapter 2580. To keep by force the instant the 8 trigrams yang water appeared in front of everyone, it immediately attracted everyone's attention. The starting bid for this 8 trigrams divination yang water is 3 million high-grade divine stones, and each bid cannot be lower than 10,000 divine stones. The auctioneer revealed an enchanting smile. Just as he finished speaking, a voice suddenly rang out, 10 million high-grade divine stones. As soon as this voice sounded out, the entire scene was in an uproar. Numerous gazes descended onto a meditation cushion in a remote corner, and an ordinary white-clothed young man sat there. The crowd didn't find 10 million high-grade divine stones strange. What was strange was that this person raised the price by 7 million high-grade divine stones. He raised the starting price of 3 million high-grade divine stones to 10 million high-grade divine stones. Of course, the uproar only lasted for a short while before someone began to bid. However, after the price of the 8 trigrams divining yang water rose to 10 million high-grade divine stones, the sounds of bidding became much quieter. Although the 8 trigrams divining yang water was a relatively rare level 9 divine medicine, the price of 10 million high-grade divine stones was already the limit. If he increased the price any further, it would undoubtedly be a loss. 20 million high-grade divine stones. Amidst the sparse sounds of bidding, the white-clothed youth once again raised the price to the height of 20 million high-grade divine stones. In an instant, the surroundings were as silent as ice. Many people looked at the white-clothed youth with unfriendly gazes. They felt that this white-clothed youth was causing trouble. The auctioneer, on the other hand, was pleasantly surprised. He looked around to see if anyone was going to raise the price. Seeing that no one was paying attention to him, he could only knock the gavel in disappointment. After winning the bid for the 8 trigrams yang water, Zhuowen heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. He knew that the price he had paid had already exceeded the actual value of the 8 trigrams yang water. However, the 8 trigrams yang water was the key to Moyan of Wushang's recovery. He didn't want anything to go wrong. Moreover, with Zhuowen's current wealth, a mere 20 million high-grade divine stones was truly a drop in the ocean. Not long after, a beautiful female cultivator carried a tray and handed it to Zhuowen. Zhuowen completely ignored the female cultivator, who was secretly throwing flirtatious glances at him. After he finished the transaction of the 20 million high-grade divine stone, he kept the 8 trigrams divining water into his spirit ring. "Brother Crepe Myrtle, I've got what I want. I don't plan to stay here any longer. I'll take my leave first," Zhuowen said to Crepe Myrtle Star Monarch. Crepe Myrtle Star asked in surprise, "Brother Zhua, don't you plan to find Patriarch Mountain River, Su Liang?" Zhuowen waved his hand and said, "I still have some urgent matters to attend to. It won't be too late to come back to the Mountain and River Hall after I'm done." The Crepe Myrtle Star Monarch nodded and said, "I'll go with you. There's nothing here that I want. It's boring to stay here." Zhuowen nodded and left with Lan Ji and Purple Star Sovereign. There were quite a few cultivators who got up and left halfway, and the Mountain River Hall would not stop this. After all, others had already bought what they wanted. It was understandable that they did not want to stay here. The Mountain and River Hall had no reason to force people to stay. However, just as Zhuowen and Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign were about to leave, Su Liang, who was sitting cross-legged below the high platform, suddenly opened his eyes and laughed. "Fellow Taoist Crepe Myrtle, why are you in such a hurry to leave? Don't you want to catch up with your old friend?" As soon as Su Liang said this, the originally lively auction immediately quieted down. Everyone's eyes gathered on Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign. They did not expect that Su Liang would ask this person to stay. Could it be that this person was special? Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign frowned at Su Liang and cupped his fists. "It's not convenient today. I'll definitely pay you a visit another day." Su Liang laughed and said, "There's no need for another day. Let's do it today." As he spoke, Su Liang suddenly stretched out his right hand. A wave of extreme fire energy condensed into a giant hand that could burn the heavens and extinguish the sun. It grabbed at Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign. For a moment, the square was in chaos. Many cultivators sitting on the praying mats stayed far away from Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign and Zhuowen, watching this scene in shock and bewilderment. They obviously could not figure out why Su Liang suddenly attacked. However, There were also some clear-minded people who thought of something. Their eyes lit up as they looked at Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign with blazing eyes. Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign's eyes darkened. He also stretched out his right hand. However, he used the fusion of extreme fire, extreme lightning, and extreme wind energy. Clearly, he was using his full strength. Boom! A muffled, thunderous sound resounded. Immediately after, Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign let out a muffled groan and retreated dozens of steps. He looked at Su Liang, who was slowly walking over, with fear in his eyes. Myrtle Star Monarch's heart sank. He never expected the gap between him and Su Liang to be so great. They were both at the level of 3 extreme, but Su Liang had only used the power of extreme fire to force him back despite him using all his strength. Zhuowen looked at Su Liang with interest. The power of Su Liang's attack just now was very impressive. If it was his original body, he could also take it head-on. However, Su Liang clearly did not use his full strength. According to Zhuowen's estimation, Su Liang's strength was far stronger than ordinary life and death extremes. He was probably comparable to the peak of the life and death extremes, and was transforming towards the half-step heavenly Tao master. Fellow Taoist Su, what is the meaning of this? Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign had just stabilized his body and was slightly angry. Su Yangqi came behind Su Liang and looked at Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign curiously. Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign had used the power of 3 extremes. He did not see wrongly. He did not expect that there would be a second person besides the Mountain River Hall's patriarch, who had also cultivated 3 extremes. The many powerhouses in the square who were participating in the auction were not ignorant. They had seen Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign use the power of 3 extremes clearly and knew that he was also an expert in the realm of 3 extremes. Su Liang did not look at Zhuowen at all. Instead, he stared at Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign and said indifferently, "Fellow Taoist Crepe Myrtle, have you forgotten what I said back then? I welcome you to come find me again and exchange what you need." Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign smiled bitterly and said, "Fellow Taoist Su, I think you have misunderstood. The flame parasite you mentioned is not with me. Moreover, with my strength, it is impossible for me to snatch it from old man He Fu." Su Liang frowned slightly and said indifferently, "There are only 2 people who came out of boundless Taishu. You and this brother here, and you are in the realm of 3 extremes. Only you can snatch the flame parasite from old man He Fu." Everyone looked at Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign in surprise. They had not expected this ordinary-looking purple-robed man to be able to snatch the flame parasite from old man He Fu. Moreover, they had heard that old man He Fu and the 10 great halls he led had all died in boundless Taishu. Could it be that this person had done it alone? Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign glanced at Zhuowen and saw the latter nod. Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign understood what Zhuowen meant. He pointed at Zhuowen and said, "The one who really snatched the flame parasite is this brother beside me. If you want to trade, you can find him." Chapter 2581. Su Liang raised his eyebrows as his gaze finally landed on the young man in white who had been ignored by him all this while. He had not expected that the burning bug he wanted would actually be on this young man in white with an ordinary aura. Furthermore, Purple Star Lord did not seem to be lying. It was obvious that this young man in white was the one who had obtained the burning bug. Everyone in the square was in an uproar as they looked at the white-clothed young man. Their gazes were filled with passion and greed. They had only heard of the burning bug and did not even know what it was used for. However, they knew that the 100 halls of the Taiching immortal realm had mobilized a large force to seal off the boundless Taishu because of the burning bug. The famous old man Heifu had even joined forces with the elites of the 10 halls in order to obtain the burning bug. Now that ancestor mountain river had come forward to trade for the burning bug. Anyone who was not a fool would know that this so-called burning bug was definitely not ordinary. Furthermore, the aura of this young man in white was extremely ordinary. This made many cultivators rather disdainful of him, as they thought that this young man in white was simply guilty of possessing a treasure. Although many cultivators were secretly scheming in their hearts, they also knew that their schemes were useless, as Su Liang had already beaten them to it. No one present dared to snatch something from Su Liang, as that was simply courting death. "How should I address you, little brother?" Su Liang came back to his senses and smiled as he spoke rather politely. However, his tone was unquestionable and cold. Zhuowen glanced at Su Liang indifferently and said, "Zhuowen, so it's Brother Zhua." Su Liang laughed heartily. However, Su Yangqi's eyes flickered behind Su Liang. He felt that Zhuowen's name was somewhat familiar, but he could not recall it at the moment. It was not just Su Yangqi. Many cultivators present who heard Zhuowen's introduction also felt that the name Zhuowen was very familiar, as if they had heard of it before. "I wonder if Brother Purple Star Lord is telling the truth?" Su Liang asked with a smile. "Are you talking about the burning bug?" Zhuowen replied flatly. Su Liang was still smiling, but his eyes were cold. Clearly, he was very dissatisfied with Zhuowen's obvious question. "Brother Purple Star Lord is right. The burning bug is indeed on me," Zhuowen said flatly. Su Liang's face was even brighter as he continued. "Brother Zhua, you should know what I mean. Since you have the burning bug, I would like to make a deal with you. As long as I can do it, I will." As soon as Su Liang said this, the surrounding cultivators were in an uproar. Su Liang was publicly recognized as an expert second only to the Grand Pure One in the Grand Pure One Immortal realm. To be able to obtain a favor from such an expert was unattainable for many cultivators. Zhuowen glanced at Su Liang indifferently and said, "Favor? How much can your favor be worth? I'm not interested." The smile on Su Liang's face suddenly became much colder. Many cultivators looked at Zhuowen as if they were looking at an idiot. "So Brother Zhua is looking down on Su Liang?" Su Liang's voice gradually turned cold, bringing with it a murderous aura. Su Yangqi, who was standing behind him, took a step forward, and the surrounding cultivators from the Mountain River Hall surrounded them, sealing off all paths of retreat for Zhuowen and Star Monarch Crepe Myrtle. This person really doesn't know what's good for him. He actually dares to not give face to the Mountain River ancestor in the territory of the Mountain River Hall. It seems that he is courting death. He's just an arrogant person. He only has a sharp tongue. If we really fight later, I'm afraid this guy will immediately kneel and beg for mercy. I've seen many people like this. They just want to save face. The cultivators sitting on the futons all stood up and retreated to the periphery of the square. Now that the 100 Hall auction was over, they naturally couldn't sit on the futons anymore. Furthermore, the Mountain River Hall was already in conflict with Zhuowen. If they were to really fight later, wouldn't they be implicated if they continued to sit there? Su Yangqi looked coldly at Zhuowen and said, "Brother, our Mountain River Hall's ancestor hasn't come out for a long time. This time, he came out only for the burning worm. I hope you can fulfill his wish. The Mountain River Hall will be very grateful." Zhuowen laughed coldly in his heart. Now that Su Yangqi had said something like that, he didn't even want to make a deal. It was obvious that he wanted Zhuowen to hand over the Zhuronggu for free. This Mountain River Hall was really not a good place. "Didn't your ancestor say that he wanted to make a deal with me?" "What? You don't want to talk about the deal?" Zhuowen said indifferently. Su Yangqi smiled disdainfully and said, Our ancestor is willing to talk to you and do you a favor. It's your great fortune, but you don't appreciate it. Now you want to continue the deal. Do you think there is such a good thing? Who do you think you are? You just refused, and now you want to continue the deal? Purple Star Monarch looked coldly at Su Liang and said, Brother Su, what do you mean? Do you want to fight? Su Liang clasped his hands behind his back and shook his head. Brother Ziwei, this Su has always valued harmony, but this friend of yours seems to be a little young and impetuous, speaking so presumptuously. Do you think that I, Su Liang, am an old man who is easy to bully? Speaking of this, Su Liang rubbed his right hand and said indifferently, How about this? I won't pursue the matter for Brother Purple Star's sake. Hand over the burning worm. And I promise to let the two of you leave the mountains safely. Purple Star Monarch's eyes turned cold, and he said indifferently, Brother Su, I wasn't admitting defeat. I was just advising you. You are about to provoke someone you can't afford to provoke. Don't regret it when the time comes. Lan Ji was hiding behind Purple Star Monarch at this moment. He was so scared that he didn't dare to say a word. Although he knew that Zhuowen was powerful, Su Liang was not an ordinary person. In front of such a famous supermaster, Lan Ji was instinctively afraid. Su Liang was stunned, and then laughed as if he had seen a very funny joke. He then pointed at Purple Star Monarch and said, Brother Purple Star, are you talking about yourself? I admit that you were able to reach the 3 extreme realms. But if I'm not wrong, you reached the 3 extreme realms less than 100 years ago, right? You don't even know the path after the 3 extreme realms, and your accumulation is not enough. You say you are someone I can't afford to provoke. Chapter 2582. Reverend Su Liang had reached the 3 extremes tens of thousands of years ago. Even without the follow-up cultivation method, Su Liang's strength was definitely much stronger than ordinary life and death extremes after so many years of accumulation. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been called the number 1 person below the Grand Pure One. Crepe Myrtle Star looked on coldly and said indifferently, I think Brother Su has misunderstood. The person I'm talking about is not me, but the person beside me. Crepe Myrtle Star's words were like a stone thrown into water, causing countless splashes. The expressions of the surrounding people stiffened, and the mocking laughter became even louder and more presumptuous. Su Liang also glanced at Zhuowen indifferently and continued, Brother Crepe Myrtle, I won't joke with you. If you don't hand over that thing, you won't be able to walk out of the Mountain River Hall. Crepe Myrtle Star stopped talking and looked at Zhuowen. At this moment, Zhuowen slowly opened his mouth and said, Today, your Mountain River Hall can't trap us. Su Liang, if you kneel down and apologize to us solemnly and give us the cultivation method of the 3 extremes, I might not attack your Mountain River Hall. Otherwise, your Mountain River Hall will cease to exist today. Zhuowen's words only attracted more ridicule. Su Liang shook his head, and his expression was already impatient. Su Yangqi noticed the impatience on Su Liang's face and immediately understood tacitly. He took a step forward and fiercely blasted out a fist towards Zhuowen. The power of this punch was extremely terrifying. It was enough to injure any life enlightenment cultivator. With Zhuowen's invisible body, it seemed to everyone that it was impossible for him to take Su Yangqi's punch. Unfortunately, the moment Su Yangqi's punch landed in front of Zhuowen, Zhuowen only slowly stretched out his palm and easily grabbed Su Yangqi's fist. It was as if Su Yangqi's punch was weak and powerless. It looked impressive, but was useless. Then the crowd saw Zhuowen gently twist his right hand. A terrifying bone-cracking sound was heard, and Su Yangqi's right fist was directly twisted off. Su Yangqi wanted to retreat, but unfortunately, Zhuowen's right foot was much faster than his reaction. He kicked Su Yangqi's chest, which actually dented Su Yangqi's sternum and shattered all his internal organs. Rumble! When Su Yangqi fell to the ground in a sorry state, everyone finally reacted. Everyone stared blankly at Su Yangqi, who was struggling on the ground. Although Su Yangqi looked like he had only suffered superficial wounds. In fact, when Zhuowen threw out that punch, he had also destroyed more than half of Su Yangqi's soul. If Su Yangqi wanted to recover without hundreds or thousands of years of cultivation, it would be very difficult to repair the damaged divine soul. Su Liang was the first to react. He looked at Zhuowen solemnly and said, "It seems that I have underestimated you. You are actually a cultivator in the death enlightenment state." When Zhuowen attacked just now, others might not have noticed it, but Su Liang had noticed the mysterious death divine energy that erupted from Zhuowen. Although it was only a trace, Su Liang was not an ordinary cultivator. He immediately recognized the fluctuation of the mysterious death divine energy. The surrounding cultivators' gazes also turned solemn. They did not expect that this ordinary-looking young man in white was actually a powerful cultivator in the death enlightenment state. Other than Su Liang, there was probably no one present who was a match for this young man in white. However, even if you are in the death enlightenment state, you won't be able to walk out of the Mountain River Hall today. Since you dared to hit the Mountain River Hall master, you should be aware of the consequences. As soon as Su Liang said that, a terrifying killing intent spread out and froze the entire surrounding space. Feeling the terrifying killing intent, the surrounding spectators felt a chill in their hearts and could not help but retreat a little more. Many of them cast pitiful gazes at Zhuowen and Star Monarch Ziwei. Although Zhuowen had beaten Su Yangqi to the ground with one move, Su Liang was not Su Yangqi. He was the Mountain River Hall's patriarch. His strength was extremely terrifying, and he had once defeated an expert in the life and death enlightenment state. No matter how strong Zhuowen was, how could he be stronger than Su Liang? Brother Purple Star, you should also step back a little, Zhuowen said to Crepe Myrtle behind him. Purple Star Sovereign nodded and kept retreating with Lan Ji, who was trembling in fear. When they retreated to the edge of the square, he looked at the two people who were still standing in the square. In fact, Star Monarch Crepe Myrtle was not confident either. Although he knew that Zhuowen was very strong, Su Liang was not an ordinary cultivator. He was a true expert. He did not know what Zhuowen's chances of winning were. A mere death enlightenment state cultivator dares to face me directly. Your courage is not bad, but sometimes the more courageous a person is, the faster they will die. You belong to this kind of person. Su Liang's calm voice slowly rang out. His entire body turned into a shadow and disappeared on the spot. Boom! Zhuowen stomped his right foot and moved dozens of meters to the side. Then a terrifying, huge pit appeared where he was originally standing. Countless gravel splattered everywhere. A figure stood brazenly within the enormous pit. It was Su Liang. At this moment, Su Liang's entire body was covered in black flames. The temperature of the black flames was extremely terrifying. It gave people the illusion that it could burn anything. Zhuowen was no stranger to the black flames because it was the energy of the extreme fire. On the other hand, the surrounding cultivators were utterly unable to see Su Liang clearly before they noticed that Su Liang had already appeared where Zhuowen was earlier, and his speed was so swift that it caused all of their expressions to go pale. Of course, Zhuowen was able to dodge such a fast attack in an instant. Many people thought highly of Zhuowen. Good reaction. Su Liang sneered and took a step forward. Suddenly, terrifying cracks appeared on the ground like countless spiderwebs. Su Liang disappeared like a cannonball. In the next moment, he appeared in front of Zhuowen. Boom! Zhuowen also fiercely threw out a punch, which collided with Su Liang's. Immediately after, countless forces of energy flew out, causing the entire plaza to shake. The terrifying energy actually caused countless cracks to spread across the ground of the plaza. Then, everyone found that Zhuowen stood motionless like a rock, while Su Liang took 4 or 5 steps back before he could stabilize himself. How is this possible? Zhuowen actually punched Su Liang. Not only did he not retreat, but Su Liang was the one who retreated. How is this possible? Could it be that Su Liang is not a match for him? Chapter 2583. Instant defeat. He never thought that in front of such a powerful Su Liang, Zhuowen would actually have the upper hand. However, the Purple Star Sovereign also knew that Su Liang had not used his full strength. After all, Su Liang had only used the extreme fire energy. Good boy, you really hid your strength well. You actually have such a powerful physical body. Su Liang stabilized his body. The contempt in his eyes completely disappeared. Just as he finished speaking, his gaze fell on Zhuowen, only to discover that Zhuowen was no longer there. Old fart, you talk a lot. But very quickly, a clear and cold voice sounded in Su Liang's ears. He cursed in his heart and fiercely punched to the left. Unfortunately, the instant he punched out, a fist had already heavily smashed into his face. Puchi! Su Liang spat out a mouthful of blood, mixed with several blood-stained teeth. Then, his entire body involuntarily flew backwards, heavily smashing into the ground not far away. At this moment, the entire place was silent. Everyone looked at Zhuowen with a completely different gaze. Even Su Liang was so easily defeated. Just who was this person? This old man wants you dead. Su Liang, who had fallen to the side, let out an explosive roar. His entire body erupted with the 3 types of extreme energy: extreme fire, extreme thunder, and extreme wind. Like an enraged wild beast, he rushed towards Zhuowen. The current Su Liang, regardless of whether it was speed or strength, was much more terrifying than before. Bang! Zhuowen was not to be outdone. With his current body that had been soaked in the true dragon's blood, he was not afraid of Su Liang. Immediately, the two of them engaged in a great battle. They fought from the ground to the sky, and from the sky to the ground. The surrounding cultivators all dodged, not daring to stand near the battle between the two of them. This is the true strength of the Mountain River ancestor. Look, that Zhuowen is being suppressed by Su Liang. Although this Zhuowen is hiding his strength, Su Liang is even more powerful and terrifying. If he truly angers Su Liang, then this person will truly be unlucky. Discussions continued as Myrtle Star Monarch's eyes were filled with worry. He had not expected Su Liang to be so strong after using his full strength. He had suppressed Zhuowen. From the looks of it, Zhuowen would be defeated in less than 100 rounds. "Aunt, do you really think you're a match for me?" Su Liang's eyes were bloodshot as he looked disdainfully at Zhuowen, who was still defending himself. Although Zhuowen seemed to be at a disadvantage, his expression remained as indifferent as water. He silently looked at Su Liang and said, "Ignorant." As he spoke, Zhuowen clenched his hands in the air. Immediately, boundless purple mist surged out. Afterwards, 2 extremely slender purple swords appeared in Zhuowen's hands. Slash! Zhuowen wielded the purple sword with both hands, looking like a god. His strength had actually increased by a lot in an instant. Boom! Su Liang let out a muffled groan as he was caught off guard and was blasted flying. His gaze was bewildered as he looked at the white-clothed youth who was surrounded by purple mist and held a purple sword in his hand. Dao intent! Who are you to Tai Ching? Su Liang's pupils constricted as he couldn't help but ask. The crowd below was also shocked. They didn't expect that the white-clothed youth would actually use the power of Tao intent. Purple mist. This is at least an 8th level Tao intent. Currently, in the Huaxia heavenly domain, there's no 4th person who can reach the 8th level Tao intent other than Honorable 3 Pure Ones. No, there's another person other than Honorable 3 Pure Ones. This person was Tai Ching's disciple back then. He relied on the power of Tao intent to destroy the entire blood god temple as a true god. Even the blood god was injured. It's him. I remember that person's name is Zhuowen, right? However, this person is also Zhuowen. Could it be that he's really the legendary disciple that Honorable Tai Ching took in hundreds of years ago? Finally, someone among the crowd recalled the great event that had happened in the Tai Ching immortal realm hundreds of years ago that had shaken the entire immortal realm and even the heavenly domain, although hundreds of years had passed, and many people had almost forgotten about it. Now that someone had brought it up, everyone remembered. Wasn't the disciple that Tai Ching took in who destroyed the blood god temple back then Zhuowen? His name was exactly the same as the white-clothed youth before them. This person is that Zhuowen from hundreds of years ago. How is this possible? I heard that Zhuowen was only at the true god realm back then, but now he's actually already at the death realm? Heavens, this cultivation speed is too terrifying. An uproar broke out as all the cultivators looked at the figure that was still fighting with Su Liang in disbelief. Purple rain under the purple mist. Zhuowen put the purple swords in his hands together, took a step forward, and slashed out. Instantly, the purple mist in the sky gathered together, and then a dense purple rain fell. The moment Zhuowen slashed out with his purple sword, the purple rain gathered together and turned into sharp purple spirals that surrounded Su Liang from all directions. Su Liang's pupils shrank as the threat of death invaded his entire body. Then he let out a roar and unleashed the power of level 3 in his body. Instantly, all the purple spirals that were attacking him were dispersed. Whoosh! However, the moment Su Liang dispersed the purple spirals, a purple light instantly streaked across the sky and pierced into Su Liang's chest. Su Liang spat out a mouthful of blood and was brought down by a huge force. In the end, he fell to the ground and was pinned to the ground by a purple sword. The purple mist dispersed, and the purple rain disappeared. A white figure slowly descended from the void and landed on Su Liang, who was pinned to the ground by the purple sword. His eyes were cold and emotionless. The mountain river ancestor was defeated? That's fast. All eyes were fixed on this scene. There was only a strange silence in the surroundings. Even the sound of a pin dropping could be heard. The cultivators of the mountain river hall quietly retreated. Even the mountain river ancestor was defeated. Wouldn't they be cannon fodder if they went over? It was basically impossible to kill an expert like Zhuowen by relying on numbers. This was the common understanding of all cultivators. This was also the reason why a 9th heaven ascension expert had such a high status in the 8 heavens. Su Liang's eyes were still filled with shock and unwillingness. He did not expect that he would be defeated in the end, and in such a miserable manner. Su Liang, I could have killed you with this sword, but I didn't. Do you know why? Zhuowen said indifferently as he stepped on Su Liang's chest. Although Su Liang wanted to struggle and resist, the purple sword pinned him to the ground and made it difficult for him to move. You want the cultivation method after the 3 extremities? Su Liang asked coldly. Zhuowen's mouth was full of mockery. You don't have the cultivation method of the 3 extremities at all. Otherwise, your strength would be much higher. You would be at least a half step heavenly Tao master, or even comparable to a heavenly Tao master. However, I think you should know something about the three extremities that I don't. Tell me, and you'll suffer less pain. Su Liang's pupils constricted, but he quickly regained his composure and laughed loudly. Zhuowen, you'll kill me whether I tell you or not. Do you think I'll tell you? Moreover, can you really kill me? Chapter 2584. Great rivers and mountains boom, boom, boom. Thunderous rumbles resounded as the huge Mountain River Hall completely collapsed. Around the ruins of the Mountain River Hall, 99 huge mountains stood. The strange thing was that from the foot of each mountain to the top, there was a long river of green water that circled round after round. Zhuowen, you force me to use the great rivers and mountains that the Mountain River Hall has accumulated for countless years. Don't even think about leaving the Mountain River Hall today. Die here. Su Liang, who was nailed to the ground by the purple longsword, laughed as the purple longsword that pierced through his chest collapsed. Su Liang leaped up, and his entire body seemed to have undergone a metamorphosis. His aura was as vast as the ocean. Zhuowen frowned slightly as he looked at Su Liang, whose aura was getting stronger and stronger. His gaze fell on the surrounding 99 mountains and rivers. In his perception, Su Liang's soaring aura all came from the 99 mountains and rivers. At the same time, the moment the great rivers and mountains appeared, the gravity here increased by thousands of times. It was as if countless mountains were crushing down. Zhuowen's body swayed, and his face turned slightly pale. Plop, plop, plop. The other spectating cultivators, who had retreated to the edge of the square, were even worse off. Under the heavy pressure, all of them knelt on the ground and barely supported their bodies. How terrifying! Purple Star Monarch was in a better state. He knelt on one knee and looked at Su Liang, who was surrounded by the 99 mountains and rivers, in horror. Ancestor Su, this has nothing to do with us. Don't drag us into this. Let us leave this place first. That's right, Ancestor Su. We are only here to participate in the 100 Halls auction. Let us leave. Naturally, there were many hall masters present. However, their strength was much weaker than Su Liang's. At this moment, after Su Liang activated the great rivers and mountains, they were all kneeling on the ground and could not resist at all. Su Liang looked coldly at the cultivators who were talking and did not pay attention to them. After seeing how strong Zhuowen was, he was now a lot more cautious. Now that he had activated the great mountains and rivers, how could he make an exit for these people? If he really did that, given Zhuowen's strength, he would probably be able to leave this great mountain and river as soon as possible. Su Liang said indifferently, "After I annihilate this kid, I'll naturally release all of you. So before I annihilate this kid, I hope that all of you can silently endure it." The moment Su Liang's words came out, the other people all cursed in their hearts, but they didn't dare to refute in the slightest. Their lives were already in Su Liang's hands. If they cursed Su Liang at this moment, wouldn't they be seeking their own deaths? Many of them were praying that Su Liang would kill Zhuowen as soon as possible. That way, they wouldn't have to stay in this terrifying chain formation. Zhuowen silently looked at the sky, only to see Su Liang floating in the middle of the 99 mountains and rivers. Then the 99 mountains and rivers actually surged out one after another, all of them converging into Su Liang's body. That's Mountain Soul? Zhuowen's eyes narrowed. He looked at the images of the mountains and rivers that rushed out from the mountains and rivers. He couldn't help but guess that these images should be the Mountain Soul. Relying on the Mountain Soul, Zhuowen discovered that Su Liang's aura was constantly rising, and the power in his body was also becoming stronger and stronger. Moreover, this energy was neither the power of the three extremes nor divine power. Instead, it was a real power that was as heavy as Mount Tai. Zhuo Wen's brows knit together slightly as his hands suddenly grabbed at the air, and two violet swords that flowed with violet light condensed into form. After that, he suddenly swung them, causing the two violet swords to tear through the sky and instantly arrive before Su Liang. Bang, bang. Su Liang's eyes widened. He clenched his right hand into a fist and smashed it forward. This fist contained unparalleled power. It was heavy as if it were light. The wind from the fist whistled, forming a transparent fist aura on the surface of the fist. It actually smashed the two purple swords into dust with a single punch. His strength has indeed increased by a lot. Zhuo couldn't help but frown when he saw Su Liang easily smash the purple swords formed from Dao intent. If Su Liang's strength was said to be at the peak of the two extremes of life and death before, then this guy's strength was now comparable to a half-step heavenly Dao master by relying on the power of the mountains and rivers. Although Zhuo had fought the half-step heavenly Dao master Black Smoke King, the main force at that time was Bloodscale, and he had only assisted Bloodscale from the side. Only then did they finally kill the Black Smoke King. Currently, Su Liang's strength was no weaker than the Black Smoke King. However, because the Black Smoke King had an abnormal innate ability, Su Liang was a little easier to deal with. Even so, it was still a little difficult to fight the current Su Liang with just the strength of his original body. Of course, if Zhuo used the sacrificial death sword, he could fight Su Liang. However, he knew that he couldn't kill Su Liang. Although the sacrificial death sword had proven its Dao and become a heavenly Dao array divine artifact, the strength of Zhuo's original body was still too weak. He couldn't unleash the full power of the sacrificial death sword. The strength of his original body, who wielded the sacrificial death sword, was about the same as that of a half-step heavenly Dao master. Is this all you've got? If so, then you can just wait to die. Su Liang looked at Zhuo with disdain. He was full of confidence. The Mountain River Palace was built by countless generations of palace masters of the Mountain River Palace. It was the foundation of the Mountain River Palace. As long as the Mountain River Palace existed, the Mountain River Palace would never fall. Boom! Su Liang stomped on the void, and the sound of air exploding continuously rang out. Su Liang appeared behind Zhuo as if he had teleported. Although Zhuo relied on the purple mist to barely dodge Su Liang's attack, his eyes were full of surprise. Su Liang's current speed was simply beyond his imagination. If he hadn't reacted quickly, he would have definitely been hit by this punch. With Su Liang's current strength, he probably wouldn't have had it easy. Your reaction isn't bad, but how many of my attacks can you withstand? Su Liang's eyes grew more and more complacent. He even revealed a hint of mockery. As soon as he finished speaking, Su Liang disappeared on the spot again. Waning sun of the sea, Zhuo pointed at the void, and a space-time sea appeared around him. A purple sun rose from the end of the sea behind him. Rumble! The moment Su Liang entered the space-time sea, his figure immediately slowed down. Then, Zhuo's fist suddenly blasted over and directly smashed Su Liang's cheek, sending Su Liang flying. After flying dozens of meters away, Su Liang forcefully stopped his figure. He looked at the purple sun behind Zhuo with surprise and said, "It's actually a space-time ability." But so what if it's a mere space-time ability? It can't stop me. Su Liang suddenly formed a seal with both hands. Immediately, the 99 mountains and rivers in the sky suddenly fell, crashing into the space-time sea and erecting unscalable mountains. Chapter 2585. A Terrifying Battle. Su Liang turned into a shadow as he darted around the 99 mountains and rivers. Every time he leaped, he would send out a punch that smashed towards Zhuowen. Zhuowen stomped his foot, and the purple sun floated above his head. Borrowing the power of the purple sun, he leaped up and smashed towards Su Liang. Zhuowen's speed wasn't any slower than Su Liang's. When the two of them collided, the terrifying shockwaves were as terrifying as a tsunami that only appeared once in 100 years. The cultivators at the edge of the battlefield all used their own defensive techniques to resist the shockwaves from the battle between Zhuowen and Su Liang. Moreover, there were some unlucky cultivators who were directly destroyed by the shockwaves from the collision. The cultivators at the side were so frightened that they hurriedly retreated a distance. Bang! After 100 exchanges, a figure was directly blasted away. Then he twisted his body in the air and forcefully stopped himself. Everyone looked over and discovered that the figure that was blasted away was Zhuowen. Looks like ancestor Su still has the advantage. The outcome should be decided soon. At that time, we'll be able to leave this damned place. When everyone saw that the figure that was blasted away was Zhuowen, they all let out a sigh of relief. They knew that as long as Su Liang won, they would be truly free. Die! A cold shout sounded out. Su Liang suddenly shot out from the 99 mountains and blasted towards Zhuowen like a rainbow. At this moment, Su Liang was like a falling meteor, gorgeous and terrifying. The power of this attack was so great that it caused a terrifying earthquake in the surrounding tens of millions of miles. The expressions of the surrounding cultivators changed. It was obvious how terrifying Su Liang's attack was. Zhuowen's eyes flickered as he tapped his forehead with his right hand. Instantly, a strand of gray qi shot out and turned into a monstrous sword qi. Moreover, within this sword qi, there was also a soul-shaking thread of death. Rumble! The moment the death sacrifice sword appeared, it brought along a rainbow of death as it slashed towards Su Liang. Instantly, Su Liang's falling momentum stopped in the air. Bang! Bang, bang, bang. Then, a series of explosions rang out in the air. Su Liang's pupils shrank slightly. Soon after, he let out a muffled groan and flew backwards. The death sacrifice sword was also blasted downwards and landed in Zhuowen's hand. What kind of divine weapon is this? Su Liang stopped and stared at the death sacrifice sword in Zhuowen's hand. Earlier, when the death sacrifice sword had cut into his hand, he had actually felt the threat of death. Moreover, that blow had actually caused the blood in his body to boil. Although he had not been injured, it had still affected him somewhat. In particular, Su Liang could actually feel the aura of the heavenly Tao within the sacrificial death sword. Furthermore, the aura of the heavenly Tao was extremely dense. Su Liang was definitely not unfamiliar with this aura. It was extremely similar to the Tao aura circulating on the surface of the Tao fruit. This is very likely a divine tool of Tao validation. No wonder this kid is so confident. It turns out that he has the backing of this divine tool of Tao validation. Su Liang thought to himself. His heart was full of fire. Thinking up to there, Su Liang became even more determined to obtain the death sacrifice sword in Zhuowen's hand. So what if it was a divine tool of Tao validation? He was extremely confident in the might of the great mountains and rivers. As long as he killed Zhuowen, the divine tool of Tao validation would naturally be his. Zhuowen saw the greed in Su Liang's eyes. He knew that Su Liang had probably guessed that the death sacrifice sword in his hand was a divine tool of Tao validation. Most likely, Su Liang had set his sights on the death sacrifice sword in his hand. Mountains and rivers transform. Su Liang formed a seal with both hands. Immediately, the surrounding 99 mountains and rivers merged together, forming a stone giant. Su Liang merged with the stone giant's chest, becoming the stone giant's core. The stone giant roared furiously. Its huge stone arm whistled through the air and viciously slammed towards Zhuowen. Zhuowen held the sword in his right hand. His gaze was solemn as he slashed out. Instantly, sword qi filled with the aura of death soared into the sky. Although the sword qi was terrifying, it actually collapsed under the stone giant's arm. Then, the stone giant's arm continued to crush downwards. Zhuowen's body was surrounded by purple mist. He narrowly dodged the stone giant's attack. He leaped up and slashed out with the death sacrifice sword again. It slammed into the stone giant's chest, creating a hole that was dozens of feet wide. The hole was indeed large, but compared to the stone giant's huge body, it was not worth mentioning. However, the stone giant seemed to be self-healing. The stone giant's chest actually wriggled and completely healed. Zhuowen's gaze was solemn. Not only was the stone giant's body terrifying, but its self-healing ability was also terrifying. It was simply a humanoid machine. The terrifying sound of something breaking through the air rang in Zhuowen's ears. Zhuowen raised the death sacrifice sword and blocked in front of him. Then he was sent flying. He barely managed to stabilize himself several thousand meters away. It turned out that the sound of something breaking through the air was the stone giant's other arm. Bang! 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 The stone giant swept over again. Zhuowen met it head-on. Then, the two immediately engaged in a fierce battle. Although the power of Zhuowen's death sacrifice sword was terrifying, the stone giant was not weak either. The two were basically evenly matched. At the foot of the mountain river hall, a figure slowly approached. It was a black-clothed youth with an ordinary appearance. He looked exactly the same as Zhuowen's original body. On his shoulder stood a fiery red goo worm the size of a thumb. Ancestor Mountain River, I underestimated this old fellow's strength. He actually used the Mountain River Hall to raise his strength to the level of a half-step Heavenly Tao Master. Although his original body's strength has increased rapidly, it is at most on par with a half-step Heavenly Tao Master. It will be difficult to kill him. The black-clothed youth's pitch-black eyes looked at the huge stone giant above the Mountain River Hall. He also looked at the white-clothed youth who was constantly darting around the stone giant. The killing intent in his eyes was like a monstrous tsunami. After saying that, the black-clothed youth stomped his foot on the ground. Immediately, the entire ground rumbled. The black-clothed youth shot up into the sky like a cannonball and swept towards the top of the mountain. At this moment, the Mountain River Hall was already in ruins. Only the battle between Ancestor Mountain River and Zhuowen remained. The cultivators who were hiding at the edge were all trembling with fear, afraid that they would be affected. They knew very well that if Ancestor Mountain River did not break the restriction around the Mountain River Hall or was defeated, they would not be able to leave this place. Lan Ji hid behind Purple Star Sovereign. His whole body trembled. He could not help but ask Purple Star Sovereign with a trembling voice, "Lord Purple Star, do you think Master will win?" Crepe Myrtle Star Monarch narrowed his eyes and sighed. If Brother Zhuo's avatar is here, he should be able to win. But now his strongest avatar is not here. According to the situation, I can't tell who will win. Lan Ji's pupils shrank. He did not expect Zhuowen to have a clone. According to Purple Star Sovereign, that clone was even stronger than Zhuowen's original body. Chapter 2586, Sorcerer Race's Secret Codex Crack. While everyone was trembling in fear, the energy barrier outside the ruins of the Mountain River Hall, which was formed by the Great Mountain River Array, trembled violently. Then, countless cracks appeared on its surface. What's going on? The barrier formed by the Mountain River Hall cracked. Everyone raised their heads and looked at the cracks on the barrier behind them in confusion. After all, the barrier was formed by the Mountain River Hull. Even if the extreme realm of life and death wanted to break it, it would be difficult to do so. When the barrier finally shattered, a black-clothed young man stepped in. His eyes were as cold as ice that had been frozen for thousands of years. Everyone was stunned when they saw the black-clothed young man. They even forgot that the barrier was broken and that they should escape. They realized that the black-clothed young man's appearance was exactly the same as Zhuowen's. Could it be that the black-clothed young man was related to Zhuowen? Lanji also saw the black-clothed young man who broke the barrier and couldn't help but be speechless. He's Zhuowen's doppelganger. He's much stronger than the original body. Purple Star Monarch looked at the black-clothed young man with a complicated expression. He could feel that the black-clothed young man's extreme 3 power was much stronger than his. It was even more terrifying than Su Liang's original body. The black-clothed young man's eyes were as sharp as a knife. He immediately saw the 2 people who had retreated after the stone giant's attack. Among them, Zhuowen's original body was retreating in the direction of the black-clothed young man. The black-clothed young man gently stretched out his right hand. A gentle energy stopped the original body from retreating. The stone giant also stabilized his body. He looked at the black-clothed young man, who suddenly appeared behind Zhuowen. His face was exactly the same as Zhuowen's, and his eyes were filled with surprise. "Who are you?" Su Liang asked coldly. The black-clothed young man sneered at Su Liang and said, "I'm also Zhuowen." After saying that, the black-clothed young man stepped into Zhuowen's body. Instantly, Zhuowen's aura reached an unprecedented level. When the original body and the doppelganger fused together, their strength was not as simple as 1 + 1. Instead, it increased exponentially. Zhuowen's eyes shone with an unprecedented brilliance. He took a step forward and rushed towards the stone giant. Su Liang sneered. Although he could feel that Zhuowen's aura had indeed increased a lot after his clone merged with Zhuowen's original body, he still didn't think that Zhuowen would be a match for him. This was because Su Liang was extremely confident in the great mountains and rivers. However, when the stone giant's fist collided with the sacrifice death sword again, his right arm suddenly lost all feeling. His right arm had flown up at some unknown time. Then, a cold light flashed in front of his eyes, and the stone giant's limbs were all cut off. As Su Liang continued to activate the energy of the mountains and rivers to heal the stone giant's limbs, the young man in white before him quickly slashed out countless times with his sword. Then, the stone giant was cut into countless pieces. Puchi, at the core of the stone giant's chest, Su Liang spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground. His face was pale, and he was on the verge of death. "How is this possible? How did you suddenly become so strong? The great mountains and rivers actually broke just like that?" Su Liang's eyes were filled with unwillingness. From the moment Zhuowen's doppelganger merged with the original body to the moment Zhuowen chopped the stone giant into pieces, all of this happened in the blink of an eye. The onlookers were still thinking about how the black-clothed young man had broken through the great mountains and rivers. They never thought that in the blink of an eye, the stone giant would be cut down just like that. This was just too fast. Zhuowen did not pay any attention to the surrounding people, who were stunned. Instead, he slowly walked over and stepped on Su Liang's chest. "Don't kill me. I'll tell you everything." Su Liang shrieked, "No need. I only need to search your soul and take your spirit ring. I'll still know the cultivation method of the 3 extremes." Zhuowen said plainly as he extended his right hand towards the space between Su Liang's eyebrows. "No, Let me tell you, the cultivation method of the three extremes is simply unsolvable. If you continue to cultivate, then it's only possible for you to become a sorcerer because a human with the three extremes has the opportunity to become a sorcerer, Su Liang hurriedly said. Zhuowen raised his eyebrows and his right hand stopped. Su Liang heaved a sigh of relief. Just as he was about to continue speaking, Zhuowen suddenly extended his right hand and tapped the space between Su Liang's eyebrows. He was actually searching his soul directly. Su Liang's eyes widened as he stared at Zhuowen. After a while, his eyes completely lost their vitality. After Su Liang's soul was destroyed, Zhuowen waved his sleeve and a divine flame burned Su Liang's body to ashes. Even the illusory heavenly bridge in Su Liang's body was burned to ashes. On the other hand, Zhuowen fell into deep thought and muttered softly, "This cultivation method is actually related to the sorcerer's venomous worms." From Su Liang's memory, Zhuowen knew the cultivation path after the three extremes. This so-called cultivation path was to plant the sorcerer's venomous worms in the cultivator's body and then achieve a state of symbiosis with the venomous worms. As long as the venomous worms continued to grow stronger, the cultivator of the three extremes would also become stronger. Logically speaking, the cultivation method of the venomous worms was not suitable for the human race because the venomous worms were very repulsive to the non-sorcerer race. However, there was a type of venomous worm that was not repulsive to all races, and that was the venomous worms of the sorcerer's venomous worms. It was said that the sorcerer's venomous worms were not primitive creatures of the untainted heavenly realm, but appeared later. When the 12 sorcerers' venomous worms appeared in the untainted heavenly realm, they were too powerful and became existences that the untainted heavenly realm respected like gods. The sorcerer tribe was a tribe cultivated by the sorcerer ancestor. Their cultivation method was also passed down by the sorcerer ancestor and belonged to the sorcerer tribe. On the other hand, the venomous insects of the ancestral sorcerer were not restricted by race. As long as one could gain the recognition of the ancestral sorcerer's venomous insects, any race would be able to achieve a state of symbiosis with the venomous insects of the ancestral sorcerer. Of course, other than the shaman tribe. If the other tribes did not want to be devoured by the ancestral wizard goo worm, they had to cultivate extreme energy. Only by reaching the three extremes would they be recognized by the ancestral wizard goo worm. Otherwise, other tribes, including the human tribe, would not have the chance to form a symbiotic relationship with the ancestral wizard goo worm. Even the sorcerer tribe had to fulfill various conditions to obtain the ancestral sorcerer goo worms. Zhuowen finally understood why Su Liang was trying so hard to obtain the Zhurong goo. It turned out that Su Liang knew about the origin of the Zhurong goo. Moreover, he was a master of three extremities. Most likely, he wanted to try to achieve a symbiotic state with the Zhurong goo. As for how to plant the Zhurong goo in one's body, Su Liang remembered that he had once obtained an incomplete secret codex of the sorcerer clan. The codex was kept in Su Liang's cave. Chapter 2587. Saving Wushang at this moment. The ruins of the Mountain River Hall were silent. The onlookers were petrified as they stared at the white-clothed young man standing in the ruins and Su Liang's body that had been destroyed. They still found it hard to believe that the Mountain River Hall's patriarch, who was second only to the Grand Pure One in strength, had been killed just like that. Zhuowen ignored the people around him. Instead, he slowly walked in front of Crepe Myrtle Star Monarch and Lan Ji. Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign's eyes were filled with reverence, while Lan Ji's eyes were filled with fear and admiration. The battle just now had completely shocked the two of them. They knew that the battle had gone beyond the scope of the 9 steps of the void sky. "I will occupy the Mountain River Hall, for now. You have any objections?" Zhuowen stood in the ruins and looked at the surrounding cultivators. All the cultivators who met Zhuowen's gaze subconsciously lowered their heads. Then, the cultivators cupped their fists at Zhuowen and left the Mountain River Hall. Even the disciples of the Mountain River Hall left. Soon, only Zhuowen, Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign, and Lanji were left in the ruins of the Mountain River Hall. Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign and Lanji looked at Zhuowen's back in reverence. They knew that from today onwards, Zhuowen had established himself in the grand, pure, immortal realm. The fame of killing Su Liang was enough to make all the forces in the grand, pure, immortal realm not dare to provoke Zhuowen. After Zhuowen set up several level 9 formations in the ruins of the Mountain River Hall, he casually built a simple cave palace in the ruins. After arranging for Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign and Lanji to stay in the cave palace temporarily, Zhuowen left the place. Zhuowen followed Su Liang's memories and quickly found an inconspicuous cave palace near the Mountain River Hall. There were level 9 formations and concealment formations outside Su Liang's cave palace. However, in the eyes of Zhuowen, who was already a level 9 formation master, these formations were as fragile as paper and were all destroyed by him. Su Liang's cave was extremely simple and crude. Apart from a stone table and a stone stool, there was nothing else inside. Zhuowen spread out his divine sense and scanned everything in the cave mansion. Finally, he found something strange in the corner. Zhuowen was inside the earth barrier in a remote corner of the cave. With a flip of his right hand, the earth barrier fell off, revealing a deep cave. In this cave, there were actually 3 jade slips half the size of a palm. After picking up the 3 jade slips, Zhuowen casually glanced through them and noticed that 2 of the jade slips were actually Su Liang's cultivation secret manuals. Such a secret manual was considered top-notch in China's Heaven region, but it was not attractive to Zhuowen. The tyrannical Tao slaughtering technique he cultivated was of a much higher level than Su Liang's secret manual. If it was not a Tao-confirming cultivation method, Zhuowen basically would not be tempted. After all, with Zhuowen's current strength, only things that belonged to Tao-confirming powerhouses were useful to him. As for things below Tao-confirming, they were almost useless to him. The 3rd jade slip aroused Zhuowen's interest. The 3rd jade slip recorded the secret manual of the sorcerer tribe that Su Liang had obtained. However, what was recorded was not the real secret manual of the sorcerer tribe, but the specific information of the sorcerer tribe's secret manual. This old man is really cautious. He actually hid the secret manual of the sorcerer tribe so well. It seems that the secret manual of the sorcerer tribe should be something extraordinary. After reading the jade slip, Zhuowen's eyes revealed a cautious look. According to the jade slip, Su Liang had hidden the secret manual of the sorcerer tribe deep in the mountains and rivers where the Mountain River Hall was located. It was said that in the depths of the underground, there was a peerless, ominous vein suppressed. The energy that maintained the operation of the mountains and rivers all came from this ominous vein. Moreover, this ominous vein was extremely huge. Back then, the Mountain River Hall's ancestor had only used a part of the ominous energy of this ominous vein. As for how huge this ominous vein was, even the successive Mountain River Hall masters had not been able to completely explore this ominous vein. They only knew that this ominous vein was huge and terrifying. This ominous vein is not simple. Su Liang has not completely explored this ominous vein. Zhuowen squinted his eyes and revealed a trace of surprise. Although Su Liang's strength was not as strong as his, he was still an expert standing at the peak of the Taiqing celestial realm. However, he had not been able to completely explore this ominous vein. This showed that this ominous vein was not ordinary. It seems that I have to go back to the old site of the Mountain River Hall first, Zhuowen said, and returned to the ruins of the Mountain River Hall. Both Crepe Star Sovereign and Lan Ji were in the cave mansion. Zhuowen said a few words to the two of them and said that he would be in seclusion for a period of time. If there was nothing important, it was best not to disturb him. Crepe Star Sovereign and Lan Ji naturally agreed. After seeing Zhuowen's strength, the two of them were even more in awe of Zhuowen. Naturally, they did not dare to disobey Zhuowen's orders. After entering the cave mansion, he completely sealed his room. Then, with a flick of his finger, a white light swept out from the spirit ring. This white light turned into a beautiful figure in white. This was an extremely young woman. However, the strange thing was that this woman's facial features did not seem to exist. She looked like a faceless woman. Looking at the faceless woman floating in front of him, Zhuowen's eyes revealed a trace of guilt. After a moment of silence, Zhuowen said in a low voice, "Wushang, today I will restore you." After saying that, Zhuowen took out 6 level 9 divine herbs from the spirit ring. These level 9 divine herbs were the Shangqing Calamity Heart, the Celestial Spirit Crystal, the Origin Golden Essence Flower, the Void Bone Refining Ginseng, the 8 trigrams Biong Water, and the Great Simplicity Double Dragon Ganoderma. These 6 divine herbs could restore Moyan Wushang's 6 lost desires. Speaking of this method, he had seen it on the last page of the wordless alchemy manual that the second elder of the Pill Tower had given him. Thinking of this, Zhuowen took out the wordless alchemy manual and flipped to the last page. According to the records on the last page, Zhuowen began to calcine the 6 divine herbs into medicinal liquid. After calcining the 6 divine herbs into medicinal liquid, Zhuowen used his powerful divine sense to control the 6 medicinal liquids and fuse them together. In the end, they turned into a strange ink-black liquid. This ink-black liquid was like a black snake constantly swimming around Zhuowen. Finally, under Zhuowen's mind, it fiercely drilled into the body of Moyan Wushang, who was floating in front of him. The moment this ink-black liquid entered Moyan Wushang's body, Zhuowen could clearly feel that the unconscious Moyan Wushang was trembling slightly. Chapter 2588. The Wordless Alchemy book. Zhuowen's eyes lit up as he paid close attention to Moyan Wushang. He knew that the elixir really had an effect on Moyan Wushang's condition. A month later, Zhuowen was still by Moyan Wushang's side. However, Zhuowen's eyes were getting brighter and brighter. Over the past month, with the help of the black elixir, Moyan Wushang's facial features had gradually recovered. The current Moyan Wushang was almost the same as before, except for the fact that he was still in a coma. "I say, kid, how did you get this alchemy book?" Suddenly, a muffled voice sounded in Zhuowen's mind. Zhuowen was startled and immediately released the Pill Emperor Turtle. The Pill Emperor Turtle's head was deep in the Pill Emperor furnace. Its little hay eyes were fixed on the wordless alchemy book that Zhuowen had casually placed aside. Zhuowen looked at the wordless alchemy book and said, casually, "The Pill Tower's second elder gave it to me. I heard that it was an alchemy book passed down by the Pill Tower's ancestor. However, this alchemy book is blank. The only record is on the last page. It happened to be about curing the 6 desires, so the Pill Tower's second elder gave it to me." The Pill Emperor Turtle shook its head and said with a nostalgic look, "This alchemy book is not simple. I once heard my master say that he was chased to the 8 heavenly domains in order to obtain this alchemy book. Then he helplessly fell." Zhuowen was startled. The Pill Emperor Turtle's master was the Pill Emperor Fire. Zhuowen knew this. After all, the divine Pill Secret Realm in the Pill Furnace Star Field was created by the Pill Emperor Fire. Although he didn't know the exact strength of the Pill Emperor Fire, he knew that the Pill Emperor Fire was definitely a powerful Tao affirmation expert. Moreover, he was a high-level alchemy genius. Such an expert had fallen because of this wordless alchemy book. Could it be that the book's origin was extraordinary? Thinking of this, Zhuowen looked at the Pill Emperor Turtle. Although the Pill Emperor Turtle had said that the wordless alchemy book was extraordinary, it was completely blank. There were no words in it. So what if he knew that it was extraordinary? To him, it was still of little value. The Pill Monarch, Turtle wanted to say something, but in the end, he said, "Try using the pill fire. If I'm not mistaken, the pill fire is connected to the wordless pill book. However, I can't guarantee what will happen. After all, I've never tried it before." Zhuowen's eyes lit up. Without hesitation, he took out his alchemic fire and wrapped it around the wordless alchemic book. Seeing Zhuowen burn the wordless pill book with his pill fire, the Pill Emperor Turtle almost cursed it out loud. However, Zhuowen didn't care at all. Since the wordless pill scripture was not a mortal scripture, it naturally could not be burned away so easily. Moreover, with Zhuowen's personality, this wordless pill scripture would not be of much use to him, so he would not feel any heartache even if it was burned away. Zhuowen suddenly let out a soft cry of surprise. He saw that the alchemy fire that was constantly burning was actually absorbed by the wordless alchemy book. In the end, the alchemy fire on the surface of the wordless alchemy book disappeared, and the alchemy book floated in midair. The alchemy fire was absorbed. Zhuowen frowned. He reached out with his right hand and pinched the alchemy fire that was floating in midair. He opened it. Seeing that the alchemy book was still empty, Zhuowen was slightly disappointed. However, when he flipped to the last page of the alchemy book, his eyes suddenly lit up. On the other side of the last page, there was an imprint of a flame. Zhuowen was no stranger to this flame imprint. It was in the shape of an alchemy fire. Besides the imprint of the alchemy fire, there was also a dense cluster of small words on the page. Zhuowen carefully looked at the words recorded on the last page. His face revealed a trace of seriousness and excitement. "Heavenly Tao Divine Pill Art." Zhuowen muttered to himself. He read the first line of the title that appeared on the last page. After carefully studying the contents of the last page, Zhuowen was even more surprised. This so-called Heavenly Tao Divine Pill Art was extremely amazing. From the introduction inside, relying on the alchemy fire to form this alchemy technique could increase the success rate of the Heavenly Tao Divine Pill by 90%. Although Zhuowen didn't know about the Heavenly Tao Divine Pill, he was a level 9 Divine Array Master. He knew that after the level 9 Divine Array Master was the Heavenly Tao Divine Array Master, whose level corresponded to the Tao Confirmation Realm. Naturally, the level of the array was the same. Back then, Shui Wuhan had set up the Bloodlight Meteor Array in the gap, leading to the primitive heavenly realm. It was a heavenly fate array, which was much stronger than the Heavenly Tao array. The level of the alchemist was naturally similar to that of the Divine Array Master. They also started from the Heavenly Tao level. The level of the Tao Confirmation Divine Pill refined was naturally the same. The Heavenly Tao Divine Pill was undoubtedly the first level of the Tao Confirmation Divine Pill. Of course, although it was only the lowest level of the Tao Confirmation Divine Pill, it was still a Tao Confirmation Divine Pill. In the 8 heavenly realms, there had never been a Heavenly Tao Divine Pill. If there really was one, Zhuowen guessed that the Tao Confirmation Divine Pill passed down by the ancestors of the Tusita, Heavenly Realm's Old Lord Tusita, should be a Heavenly Tao Divine Pill. Although Zhuowen didn't know the success rate of an ordinary Heavenly Tao alchemist in refining a Heavenly Tao Divine Pill, he knew that being able to increase the success rate by 90% was definitely a heaven-defying success rate. One had to know that even if a Heavenly Tao level alchemist was like a pig, concocting a heavenly Tao-level divine pill would basically be a failure. As long as one grasped the heavenly Tao-level divine pill formula in this alchemy manual, they would basically have a 90% success rate. As long as an ordinary heavenly Tao alchemist knew this pill art, they would definitely be able to refine a heavenly Tao divine pill with a 100% success rate. There was no chance of failure at all. This showed how heaven-defying and terrifying this heavenly Tao divine pill art was. However, Zhuowen was troubled by the fact that he didn't know any alchemy skills at all. Although he had seen some of the alchemy books that the second elder of the Pill Tower had given him, he had only read a part of them. Moreover, he was extremely pressed for time recently, so he didn't have time to study alchemy. Whoosh! Just as Zhuowen was distressed about alchemy, a cluster of flames suddenly swept out from the alchemy fire on the last page of the alchemy book. Then, it shot towards the space between Zhuowen's eyebrows. Zhuowen's body shook. Then, a huge amount of information appeared in his mind. The content of this information was actually all about alchemy. With the help of this information, Zhuowen's understanding of alchemy increased imperceptibly. His eyes revealed a bright and penetrating look. Zhuowen sat cross-legged on the spot for a total of 10 days and 10 nights. Finally, he suddenly opened his eyes. A ray of light that was as bright as the moon pierced through heaven and earth. So that's how it is. So this is what alchemy is all about. Where did this wordless alchemy book come from? Zhuowen's gaze fell on the wordless alchemy book. He knew that this wave of alchemy didn't come from the alchemy book, but from the alchemy fire. This alchemy fire was D. Alchemy Fire's natal alchemy fire. It contained D. Alchemy Fire's lifelong understanding of alchemy. The alchemy fire had been by his side for a long time, but it didn't pass on any of D. Alchemy Fire's insights when he was alive. However, ever since the alchemy fire was recorded in the wordless alchemy book, it immediately gave him feedback on D. Alchemy Fire's insights when he was alive. He knew that this was all because of the wordless alchemy book. This wordless alchemy book clearly had spirituality. The moment he used the alchemy fire, the wordless alchemy book must have acknowledged him and thanked him in this way. Chapter 2589. Wu Shang was still unconscious. No matter what the reason was, Zhuowen had comprehended the alchemy Tao of the Emperor Pill Fire, even though he had yet to refine any Tao-confirming spirit pills. However, with the Emperor Pill Fire's comprehension of the alchemy Tao, Zhuowen knew that his alchemy skills should be able to improve very quickly. Once he broke through to become a level 9 alchemist and advanced to a heavenly Tao alchemist with the wordless alchemy book's alchemy arts, refining heavenly Tao divine pills would be as easy as eating a meal. It seems that I need to find time to improve my array Tao and alchemy Tao. Zhuowen thought to himself. Zhuowen didn't have any confidence in improving his array Tao, but with the Emperor Pill Fire's comprehension of the alchemy Tao, Zhuowen knew that it would be much easier for him to improve his alchemy Tao. This was because the Emperor Pill Fire was a Heaven's Mandate alchemist. It could be said that it was a powerful second step Tao-confirming alchemist, an expert who could refine Heaven's Mandate divine pills. With the Emperor Pill Fire's comprehension of the alchemy Tao, not to mention a Heaven's Mandate alchemist, even a Heaven's Mandate alchemist, Zhuowen was confident that he could smoothly advance. However, Zhuowen knew that the alchemist profession was an extremely money-burning profession. If he wanted to improve his alchemy Tao, he could only continuously refine divine pills and try to refine higher-grade divine pills. Otherwise, improving his alchemy Tao was simply empty talk. As for the medicinal ingredients of the Tao Confirmation Divine Pill, they were all not ordinary medicinal ingredients. In the 8 great heavenly realms, all of them were priceless. Even in the high-level heavenly realms like the Great Desolate Heavenly Realm and the Xianmi Heavenly Realm, the Tao confirmation divine medicine was a precious breed. If a Tao-confirming alchemist wanted to improve, they naturally needed Tao-confirming spirit pills to refine. Only by refining higher-grade Tao-confirming spirit pills could the alchemist's realm be considered to have improved. Moreover, Zhuowen vaguely felt that the heavenly Tao grade God pill art in this wordless pill book should only be a small part of the entire pill book. There must be other pill arts in the back, such as the Tao Yuan grade God pill art, the primordial grade God pill art, or even the third step Tao confirming God pill art. As long as he had the pill art, Zhuowen knew that he had a lot of advantages over other alchemists. Because he had the pill art, his failure rate was too low. Of course, these were only Zhuowen's guesses. Whether or not it was as Zhuowen had guessed, he would have to wait for further evidence. Zhuowen's gaze landed on Moyan Wushang, who was floating beside him. At this moment, Moyan Wushang had completely recovered his original appearance. His lost facial features had also recovered. His face was no longer expressionless. Instead, it was full of vitality. However, what made Zhuowen frown was that Moyan Wushang's eyes were still closed. He had fallen into a state of coma. Logically speaking, after Zhuowen used the 6 divine medicines to restore Moyan Wushang's 6 desires, he should be able to wake up. However, things were not going as planned. Moreover, Zhuowen also carefully checked Moyan Wushang's body. He found that the latter's physical condition was excellent. His breathing was stable, but he had not woken up. He was like a sleeping beauty. Pill Emperor Turtle, what the hell is going on? Zhuowen quickly summoned the Pill Emperor Turtle. He knew that the Pill Emperor Turtle had followed Pill Emperor Fire for many years. It must know more than him. Naturally, it had more experience than him. Although Zhuowen had inherited the D Pill Fire's alchemy Tao insights, he had not inherited the D Pill Fire's memories and vast knowledge. There were still many questions regarding the alchemy Tao that Zhuowen only knew a little about. Zhuowen also knew that experience could not be given to him by others. Only when he experienced it could he have his own experience. After all, other people's experience was still someone else's. When the Pill Emperor Turtle appeared, its black eyes fell on Moyan Wushang's body. It revealed an extremely solemn expression. Kid, the human body has 7 emotions and 6 desires. This little girl's 6 desires have been deprived. This kind of deprivation is not as simple as the physical body. The 6 desires of this little girl's soul have also been deprived. Originally, after the 6 desires of the physical body and soul were deprived, the two formed a delicate balance. This desireless thoughts were also controlled by the one who performed the technique. But now, it seems that the one who controlled the technique has already fallen. You have restored the 6 desires of this girl's physical body. However, the 6 desires of her soul have not been restored. This girl is in an unbalanced state. Therefore, it will be very difficult for her to wake up in a short period of time. The Pill Emperor Turtle's gaze was somewhat complicated. There was a trace of regret in its voice. Zhuowen's pupils shrank. He said somewhat emotionally, "Pill Emperor Turtle, when I restored Wushang's 6 desires, why didn't you tell me earlier?" The Pill Emperor Turtle said helplessly, "Kid, this is the first time I've encountered a situation where the 6 desires have been deprived. As for why this happened, how would I know? Right now, I'm just giving my opinion based on this girl's situation." "Then what should I do? Don't tell me that Wushang will continue to be like a living corpse." Zhuowen said with a gloomy expression. The Pill Emperor Turtle shook its head and said, "A situation where the 6 desires have been deprived is really too rare. It's useless to ask me. Moreover, regarding the recovery method of the 6 desires, didn't you learn about it from this alchemy book? This alchemy book is badly damaged. I'm afraid that the treatment method is also badly damaged. It's not complete. Zhuowen was silent. The Pill Emperor Turtle quietly looked at Zhuowen and said, "This wordless alchemy book has a mysterious origin. It's definitely not an ordinary item. Perhaps after you've studied it thoroughly, the other half of the method to restore the 6 desires may appear in this wordless alchemy book. When that time comes, you can save your friend." Zhuowen was still silent, but his eyes shone brightly. He looked at Moyan Wushang, who was floating next to him and breathing steadily. He said in a low voice, "At least Wushang has recovered a lot. Since the root of this method is in this wordless alchemy book, then I'll study it thoroughly. When the time comes, I'll definitely help Wushang recover his 6 desires and let him recover completely." Zhuowen made up his mind to study the wordless alchemy book and study the alchemy way. With a sigh, Zhuowen took out a large piece of jade from his spirit ring. Then he began to carve the surface of the jade. He looked very serious. Zhuowen spent 3 days carving a large piece of jade into a luxurious jade coffin. Opening the coffin lid, Zhuowen gently carried Moyan Wushang by the waist and gently placed him into the jade coffin. Hearing Moyan Wushang's steady breathing, Zhuowen felt even more ashamed. Chapter 2590. A gathering of experts. When Zhuowen removed the restriction array in the room and walked out of the cave abode, he saw Crepe Myrtle Star and Lan Ji standing at the edge of the old site of the Mountain River Hall, looking outside with solemn gazes. "What's wrong?" Zhuowen asked subconsciously. "Brother Zhua, look outside, and you'll know." Crepe Myrtle Star pointed outside the great array. Zhuowen looked through the transparent ripples at the edge of the great array and saw the many cultivators outside the great array. There were many cultivators gathered outside the great array. These cultivators were curiously looking inside the great array as if they were looking for something. Broken Mountain Hall's Hall Master Yu, Azure Sun Hall's Hall Master Wu Hui, Disturbed Love Hall's Hall Master Wu Qing. Heavens, so many Hall Masters have come. Do they plan to besiege us? Lan Ji's face was pale as he trembled. However, Lan Ji calmed down a little when he saw Zhuowen arrive. Even so, he couldn't stop his body from trembling, and there was a hint of worry in his eyes. Zhuowen's strength was terrifying. Even the patriarch of the Mountain River Hall had been killed by Zhuowen. However, Lan Ji was still a little worried. Zhuowen was alone. Did he really have the strength to fight against so many forces? Outside the array, Lan Ji could already recognize more than 30 Hall Masters. As for the remaining Hall Masters, he couldn't recognize about 40 of them. Apart from the Hall Masters of the Blood Divine Hall and the other 10 Hall Masters who had perished in the boundless Taishu, most of the Hall Masters of the 100 Halls of the Taiching Immortal Realm had come. In addition to these Hall Masters, Lan Ji also realized that these Hall Masters had sent their own elite experts. Basically, they were all experts above the Void Sky 8th step. There were hundreds of such experts. Most of the peak strength of the Taiching Immortal Realm had gathered here. Crepe Myrtle Star frowned. He hadn't expected the other 100 Hall Masters of the Taiching Immortal Realm to attack. Did they not know Zhuowen's strength? Zhuowen's gaze was extremely calm. He looked indifferently at the many experts gathered outside. He saw the same expression in their eyes, greed. He knew very well that although he had killed the Mountain River Hall's ancestor, Su Liyang, he had also obtained the Zhuronggu that Su Liyang had been longing for. Anyone who wasn't a fool would know that the Zhuronggu was extraordinary, since it could cause such a huge commotion in the boundless Taishu. Coupled with Su Liyang's actions, many people believed that the Zhuronggu was a precious treasure. Of course, these people's guesses were not wrong. The Zhuronggu was indeed a precious treasure. However, it was not very useful if it was obtained by someone who had not reached the 3 extremes. Zhuowen naturally wouldn't tell them the truth. Even if he told them the truth, they might not believe him. It seems that I was too merciful. In their eyes, the Mountain River ancestor Su Liang, who has the power of the Mountain River Hall, is a greater threat than me? The corner of Zhuowen's mouth curled into a mocking smile. Then he took a step forward and walked out of the great array. You must be the Zhuowen who has been the talk of the town recently, right? Your strength is not bad, and you were lucky enough to kill Su Liang. However, you are only a shadow after all. Do you think you can go against the entire Taiqing immortal realm alone? A middle-aged man with feminine eyes looked down at Zhuowen arrogantly. The corner of his mouth was full of arrogance, as if he didn't take Zhuowen seriously. My lord, this is the Broken Mountain Hall's Hall Master, Yu. He is ranked in the top 20 among the 100 halls and is very strong. Lan Ji hurriedly introduced him to Zhuowen. Zhuowen, you'd better know your place. You are now a turtle in a jar. Don't think that you have a foothold in the Taiqing immortal realm just because you killed Su Liang. Let me tell you, an outsider like you is not qualified to have a foothold in the Taiqing immortal realm unless you destroy all the forces in the Taiqing immortal realm. The slightly plump man standing not far away from you said with disdain, This person is the Azure Sun Hall's Hall Master, Wu Hui. Lan Ji said with a trembling voice. Zhuowen, next, these so-called palace masters would belittle Zhuo when in all sorts of ways, their gazes filled with disdain. Every time a hall master spoke, Lan Ji would whisper in Zhuowen's ear and introduce them. Zhuowen did not stop them. He just silently looked at the faces of these Taiqing immortal realm hall masters. Are you guys done talking? After a while, although the surrounding voices did not stop, Zhuowen had already opened his mouth to interrupt the hall master's conversation. Oh, it seems that you are afraid. As I said, you are only one person. Although you are strong, you can't fight against all of us here. It's good that you know your place. Why don't you quickly hand over the burning insect? The Broken Mountain Hall Master, Yu, looked at Zhuowen with a sneer. His voice was filled with undisguised ridicule. Unfortunately, just as Yu finished speaking, he was slapped hard on the cheek. Then, Yu fell to the ground in midair, creating a huge human-shaped pit. Yu, who was in the pit, twitched all over. His face was swollen beyond recognition, and broken teeth fell out of his mouth. The surroundings immediately quieted down. Everyone looked at Yu, who was lying half dead in the pit. No one had expected that Zhuowen would suddenly attack because of a disagreement. Moreover, they did not expect that Yu would be slapped to the ground. His entire body was twitching, and he was half dead. What kind of strength did this require? Even though some of the cultivators were mentally prepared, they were still frightened. Originally, I only came to the grand, pure, immortal realm for some matters. The reason why I destroyed the Mountain River Hall was because Su Liang provoked me. I originally thought that this matter would end with Su Liang's death, but I didn't expect that you ants would actually belittle yourselves and dare to besiege me. Since that's the case, I won't be merciful anymore. All of you stay here. Zhuowen's voice was cold and emotionless, as if it was 10,000-year-old profound ice. Among this group of people, Zhuowen saw many cultivators who had participated in the 100 Halls auction held by the Mountain River Hall. Originally, after killing Su Liang, Zhuowen would not pursue the matter any further, and would just release all of them. However, he did not expect that these fellows were all ingrates. Not only did they not know how to repay his kindness, they even spread the news and gathered so many hall masters and experts to encircle and annihilate him. Kill. No matter how powerful this Zhuowen is, he is only one person. With hundreds of us here, how could we be afraid of him alone? Right. Kill this person. This person is so strong, he must have a great treasure on him. When the time comes, everyone will split it. After Zhuowen heavily injured Yu with a single slap, the cultivators all roared and rushed out. Under the lead of more than 80 hall masters, they gathered towards Zhuowen like a swarm of locusts. Chapter 2591. 5 Spirit Cloud Space Fruit. We're done for. Lan Ji stood beside Zhuowen. His face was pale and his body was trembling. He almost couldn't stand still. Zhuowen lifted the blue halberd and threw it into the array. Zhuowen's avatar separated from his body, and a ray of golden light burst out from his eyes. Roar! As soon as the black-robed Zhuowen appeared, golden light filled the sky. Then, the Devourer King's true body appeared. The dazzling golden Devourer King casually swung his claws. The surrounding space was torn apart. Any cultivator below the 9th step void sky realm that was hit by this claw would either die or be injured. The Devourer King swung his giant claws again and again. Golden light rained down like golden rain. Every ray of golden light was able to deal a heavy blow to any cultivator that came in contact with it. The moment the Devourer King unleashed his invincible might, a wisp of gray energy shot out from Zhuowen's forehead. This wisp of gray energy manifested into a divine sword that was filled with the Tao of Death. This sword was the Sacrificial Death Sword, a genuine heavenly Tao divine artifact. As soon as the Sacrificial Death Sword was unleashed, there was basically no obstruction in its path. Not a single cultivator could withstand the might of the Sacrificial Death Sword. Moreover, any cultivator that was pierced by the Sacrificial Death Sword would strangely wither into a dried corpse. They couldn't be more dead. Even the strongest life Enlightenment realm cultivators could withstand the Sacrificial Death Sword's first strike. However, when the Sacrificial Death Sword slashed out a second time, the life Enlightenment realm cultivator could only let out a cry of unwillingness. He died under the Sacrificial Death Sword and became a departed soul. In less than 10 breaths of time, a third of the several hundred cultivators that came had fallen. As for the rest of the cultivators, they were all trembling in fear. They never thought that Zhuowen's strength would be so terrifying. Generally speaking, a cultivator who was good at fighting alone might not be able to withstand the combined might of so many experts. In the eyes of these cultivators, even if Su Liang were to come in person, he would have to suffer a grievance. However, their current lineup was as weak as tofu in front of this white-robed youth. It was too terrifying. Is he still human? Isn't this even crazier than Honorable Tai Ching? The remaining cultivators were all shocked as they stared blankly at the white-robed young man who was harvesting their lives like a god of death. The only thing they could see now was the white-clothed young man's cold and emotionless eyes. For some reason, they felt a deep chill in their hearts. Some of the more knowledgeable individuals noticed the Sacrificial Death Sword floating beside Zhuowen. They could sense a vast, boundless aura from the Sacrificial Death Sword. Could this be a Tao verification divine artifact? Many cultivators thought so in their hearts, but their expressions were extremely ugly and gloomy. Coupled with Zhuowen's terrifying doppelganger, most of the cultivators began to think of retreating. At this moment, they couldn't help but think that the white-clothed young man in front of them was invincible. Let's run. This person's strength far surpasses ours. It's impossible for us to kill them with numbers. A cultivator sighed. He immediately took out an escape talisman and crushed it, preparing to escape this place. Unfortunately, the moment the cultivator crushed the talisman, the stream of light he turned into only flew a few hundred meters before reappearing. In front of the cultivator, there were waves of ripples and transparent rings appeared. It was obvious that an extremely powerful barrier had appeared in front of this cultivator, blocking them all. When did you set up the level 9 formation? When this cultivator was stopped by the barrier, his face turned pale and his lips trembled. As for the other cultivators who wanted to escape, their eyes were filled with fear when they realized that this cultivator had been stopped by the level 9 formation. They thought to themselves, "It's over." Zhuowen completely ignored the thoughts of these cultivators who wanted to escape. He leisurely shuttled through the crowd of cultivators. Every time he shuttled through, the sacrificial death sword would bring about a blood-curdling scream and splatter of blood. Almost no one could withstand a single strike from Zhuowen. Zhuowen's Devourer King clone was even more terrifying. Every time he swung his giant claws, he could kill more than 10 people. This was even under the condition that these cultivators were dodging. The attacks of these cultivators were like tickles to the Devourer King clone. They had no effect at all. Coupled with the level 9 formation, they couldn't escape or fight. Their hearts were already filled with despair. In less than a quarter of an hour, after Zhuowen killed the last cultivator, the sacrificial death sword turned into a wisp of gray gas and entered his spirit. Meanwhile, the Devourer King clone turned back into the black-robed young man and merged with his original body. In the old site of the Mountain River Hall, Purple Star Monarch and Lanji were completely stunned. It wasn't until Zhuowen entered the old site of the Mountain River Hall from the outside world and arrived in front of them that the two of them subconsciously gulped. "This is my communication jade talisman. I have something to do and need to enter the Mountain River Hall to investigate. If there's any emergency, just notify me." Zhuowen handed 2 communication jade talismans to Purple Star Monarch and Lanji. After giving them a few more instructions, he entered the depths of the northern part of the Mountain River Hall. According to the introduction in Su Liang's jade slip, the entrance to the ominous vein was at the northern edge of the Mountain River Hall. Looking at the departing figure, Purple Star Monarch sighed softly and said, "I'm afraid the entire Grand Clarity Immortal Realm is going to explode into a pot." Lanji nodded in agreement and said, "My lord has already established himself in the Grand Clarity Immortal Realm. I don't think there will be any ignorant forces that will come to provoke my lord." Inside the Hall of Virtue, it was cold and cheerless. Aside from the tranquil sandalwood fragrance emitted by the purple gas lingering around, there was no one in sight. A stream of light quietly swept into the Hall of Virtue, revealing a delicate and beautiful figure. Tao rhymes flowed around this beautiful figure, giving her a different kind of charm. It was Lian Meng. As soon as Lian Meng entered the Hall of Virtue, she immediately hurried inside. The interior of the Hall of Virtue was extremely simple and crude. It was like an ordinary ancestral hall, and there was a statue enshrined at the front. This statue was none other than the face of the master of the Hall of Virtue, the Grand Clarity Immortal Realm. Lian Meng knelt on the praying mat in front of the statue, her beautiful eyes staring intently at the statue of the Grand Clarity Immortal Realm. She said softly, "Master, disciple has returned. Although I don't know what happened between you and martial uncles Yuqing and Shangqing, I still managed to obtain the ominous vein Immortal Realm. However, I have followed your instructions and brought the 5-spirit cloud void fruit here. What should I do next?" The hall was terrifyingly quiet. Only Lian Meng's voice kept echoing. Lian Meng faintly felt a trace of uneasiness, especially when she saw the Grand Clarity Immortal Realm statue in front of her squinting its eyes and staring at her. Suddenly, Lian Meng noticed that the left hand of the statue, which was holding the end of the horsetail whisk, slowly spread out, as if asking her for something. Chapter 2592. Unparalleled, ominous, vain, the instant the 5-spirit cloud space fruit landed on the grand clear statue's palm. A strand of purple light erupted from the statue's eyes. Then, the 5-spirit cloud space fruit slowly merged into the grand clear statue's palm. countless strands of purple mist erupted from the surroundings of the grand, clear statue, like rolling purple clouds. They instantly dyed the surrounding hall a strange purple. Lian Meng looked at the surroundings with some fear. Then, she discovered that the grand, clear statue was even stranger. The purple light that erupted from its eyes seemed to come from another world. It was extremely terrifying. "Master, is that you?" Although Lian Meng was afraid, she still called out softly. Unfortunately, she was met with silence. But the more silent it was, the more ominous premonition rose in Lian Meng's heart. Especially when she was in such a strange purple light, it made Lian Meng feel a sense of loneliness that was completely isolated from the outside world. "Lian Meng, my disciple, come." Suddenly, an ancient voice sounded from the grand, clear statue. Lian Meng raised her head, and her beautiful eyes saw a purple vortex appear at the center of the great, clear god statue. The depths of the purple vortex were deep and mysterious, and the voice was extremely ethereal. Lian Meng was not unfamiliar with this voice. It was the voice of her master, the grand, clear. "Master, is that you?" Lian Meng subconsciously called out. Unfortunately, the only response he received was a long silence. Struggle appeared in Lian Meng's eyes. She deeply looked at the purple vortex before her, gritted her teeth, raised her jade foot, and stepped into the purple vortex that appeared at the center of the grand clear statue. When Lian Meng's figure completely disappeared into the purple vortex at the center of the grand clear statue, the purple light in the Virtue Hall gradually receded. The purple light that burst from the grand clear statue's eyes also gradually dimmed. Everything in the Hall of Virtue had returned to normal, and the purple vortex at the center of the great Qing divine statue had vanished. It was as if nothing had happened in the Hall of Morals. The only difference was that Lian Meng was no longer in the Virtue Hall. Zhuowen stood at the end of the ruins. In front of him, there was an extremely inconspicuous small slope. This small mound was slightly raised, just like a small grave. The small slope in front of him was the entrance to the peerless ominous vein, recorded in the jade slip. With Zhuowen's level of formation Dao, he could naturally tell at a glance that there was actually an extremely powerful restriction covering the surface of the small slope. Only by breaking this restriction could he enter the restriction. After undoing the restriction on the small slope, Zhuowen pushed it open. Suddenly, a terrifying fiendish aura gushed out from the bottom of the small slope. This murderous aura was almost tangible. The moment it rushed out of the small slope, it turned into a huge, ferocious head. Like a wild beast, it pounced on Zhuowen as if it wanted to devour Zhuowen. Zhuowen let out a cold harumph and waved his sleeve. The head formed by the murderous aura immediately turned into ashes. However, Zhuowen did not show the slightest complacency. Instead, he looked dignified. The entrance to the peerless ominous vein actually had such a terrifying, murderous aura. It was hard to imagine how terrifying the murderous aura would be if he entered the interior of the peerless ominous vein. Zhuowen did not hesitate and stepped into the interior of the entrance. At the same time, he set up a formation at the entrance to cover up all the murderous aura escaping from the entrance. After entering, Zhuowen found that it was a natural cave. The cave he was in now was about 500 square meters in size. On his left and right sides were hard rock walls. In front of and behind him, there were passages in all directions. They looked like holes in a beehive and were extremely complicated. Moreover, the murderous aura inside was extremely terrifying. Waves of murderous aura invaded Zhuowen's sea of consciousness from time to time. If an ordinary cultivator were to be invaded by this baleful aura, they would easily be affected and turned into a madman who only knew how to kill. However, Zhuan was different, not to mention that he was not an ordinary cultivator. His soul was so powerful that it had definitely surpassed any cultivator in the Void Sky 9 steps. It was probably close to a Tao validation expert. Although the murderous aura in the ominous vein was terrifying, it did not have much impact on Zhuan. Zhuan continued to go deeper. He extended his spiritual sense to explore which of the passages was useful. Unfortunately, although his spiritual sense was powerful, these passages were too deep. His spiritual sense could not find anything. In the end, Zhuan could only rely on luck to choose a passage at random and continue to explore along this passage. Moreover, Zhuan also found that the deeper he went, the more terrifying the murderous aura was. Zhuan could hear ghostly wails and howls from time to time. However, Zhuan did not care about these at all. Instead, he continued to go deeper by guessing. As he continued to go deeper, he found that although these passages were complicated, they all led to the same destination. They all converged on the main road at the front. Although Zhuan was merely guessing, he had already roughly grasped the meridians and veins of this ominous vein along the way. He guessed that there was definitely a main road at the end of the path. These passages were like countless streams converging into the sea. They would eventually converge on that main road. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. While Zhuan was thinking, a rather dense sound of something breaking through the air suddenly came from around him. Immediately, Zhuan's eyes narrowed. The sound of something breaking through the air was getting closer and closer until it finally appeared behind him. Zhuan snorted coldly. His right palm blasted behind him without warning. Then, a wail came from behind him. Only then did he realize that this was the thing that had attacked him. It was a creature that was only half the height of a human. Its entire body was covered in black hair. Its body was stooped like a monkey, but its appearance was completely different from a monkey. The black hair completely covered the entire body of this creature, making it impossible for Zhuan to see what it looked like under the black hair. The black-furred monster was smashed into the rock wall by Zhuan's palm. It only wailed for a while before it nimbly slipped away. Its speed was so fast that Zhuan was speechless. What is this thing? Its body is really strong. Zhuan narrowed his eyes. Although he did not use his full strength in that palm strike, even a cultivator in the Enlightenment realm would be severely injured. However, the black-furred creature only wailed a few times before it escaped again. This made Zhuan quite curious about this black-furred creature. So, while Zhuan was deep in thought, the sound of something breaking through the air rang out again. This time, it was extremely dense. Soon after, Zhuan discovered pairs of green eyes in the surrounding pitch-black tunnels. Chapter 2593. Stone Coffin. There was no doubt that the owners of those green eyes were the same as the black-furred creature that Zhuan had just injured. Zhuan did not expect that there would be so many black-furred creatures here. Although the black-furred creatures were not very strong, their physical bodies were extremely abnormal. Roar, roar, roar. Roars suddenly resounded like the wailing of ghosts and the howling of wolves. Then, the black-furred creatures rushed towards Zhuan in tacit understanding. Zhuan no longer held back. His right hand clenched into a fist and suddenly blasted out. Profound death divine energy swept out like a storm, and then all the black-furred creatures that were flashing over were blasted away by this terrifying divine energy. What a strong physical body! Zhuan looked at the black-furred creatures that had fallen on the surrounding rock walls. When they appeared in front of him again, Zhuan's eyes finally revealed a solemn expression. Swoosh, swoosh. The black-furred creatures did not seem to know fear. After getting up, they immediately pounced again. They bared their fangs and brandished their claws. They turned into a fishy wind and continued to rush towards Zhuowen. Zhuowen frowned slightly. He blasted out the mysterious death divine energy again and blasted the black-furred creatures away. However, the black-furred creatures were like unkillable cockroaches that got up again and again. Zhuowen snorted coldly. The sword finger on his right hand touched between his eyebrows, and he immediately took out the death sacrifice sword. As soon as the death sacrifice sword appeared, it immediately turned into a flowing light and swept across the sky. In the end, it slashed the black-furred creature that had pounced on him first. Sizzle! Sizzle! The black-furred creature let out a blood-curdling scream. Its originally extremely powerful body was sliced into pieces like tofu by the death sacrifice sword. The moment the black-furred creature was destroyed, the death sacrifice sword swept across the sky without any obstruction. It pierced through more than 10 black-furred creatures and then floated around Zhuowen again. The death sacrifice sword seems to be very effective against the black-furred creatures. Could it be because the death sacrifice sword is a divine weapon? Zhuowen's eyes brightened. The sacrifice sword had the ability to restrain the black-furred creatures. To him, this was a timely rein. The black-furred creature's powerful body had caused Zhuowen quite a bit of confusion. Since the sacrifice sword could restrain the black-furred creature, it was indeed very useful to Zhuowen. Holding the sacrifice death sword, Zhuowen continued to go deeper. As he went deeper, he discovered that the number of black-furred creatures was clearly increasing. Moreover, the baleful aura in the depths was also increasing as he went deeper. With the sacrificial death sword, Zhuowen had a much easier time dealing with these black-furred creatures. It was basically no different from cutting vegetables. About an hour later, Zhuowen walked out of the passage and arrived at an even wider passage. Zhuowen turned around and saw that the tunnels behind him extended in all directions. He knew that he had reached the main tunnel in front of him. This passageway was extremely long, and the baleful aura that was originally present in this passageway had instead disappeared without a trace. Zhuowen's eyes were filled with suspicion. He felt that the situation in this passageway was too unusual. It even made him feel that it was extremely strange. Zhuowen had checked Su Liang's soul memories and knew that Su Liang had also come to this main passageway before. However, this main passageway was extremely long, and Su Liang had yet to finish walking it. From Su Liang's memories, Zhuowen knew that this main passageway was much more dangerous than the other passageways. Therefore, after entering this main passageway, he didn't dare to be careless. Instead, he became even more cautious and vigilant. After walking for about 100 meters, Zhuowen discovered that the surrounding scenery had begun to change. When he first entered the main passageway, he was surrounded by cold and pitch-black rock walls. But now, what appeared around him was no longer a rock wall, but a hollow cave. Each cave was only about half a meter high, and they were stacked layer by layer on top of each other, appearing densely on both sides of Zhuowen. Zhuowen approached one of the caves. His eyes were like torches as he looked into the cave. He vaguely felt that there was something inside. However, the surface of each cave here had a natural force that blocked spiritual sense. Although Zhuowen's spiritual sense was strong, the moment it entered the cave, it was blocked by this invisible force, making it impossible for him to see what was inside the cave. Although he vaguely felt that there was something inside the cave, he wasn't sure what it was. Thinking of this, Zhuowen grabbed at the air with his right hand. His profound death divine power turned into an invisible hand and grabbed at the cave. Although this cave had a mysterious force, this force seemed to only block a cultivator's spiritual sense. It didn't hinder other forces. So Zhuowen's profound death divine power hand entered the cave unimpeded. The moment Zhuowen grabbed the thing inside the cave, his pupils shrank, and he revealed a look of surprise. This was because what he grabbed from the cave was actually a simple and mysterious stone coffin. The surface of the stone coffin was engraved with all kinds of complicated and mysterious patterns. A vicissitude and strange aura was released from the stone coffin. Zhuowen's eyes showed hesitation. In the end, he didn't open the stone coffin because he felt that this stone coffin was very strange and even gave him a sense of threat. Could it be that there is a stone coffin in every cave here? Zhuowen put the stone coffin back into the cave and looked at the other caves around him. There were at least hundreds of caves here. Could it be that there was a stone coffin in every cave? Then there were hundreds of stone coffins. With this doubt in mind, Zhuowen tried to grab the other caves, but he found that they were all empty. Only the cave he had just touched had a stone coffin hidden inside. After wandering around for a while, Zhuowen left this place and continued to go deeper. He had a feeling that there should be something good hidden in the deepest part of this fierce vein. Otherwise, this fierce vein wouldn't have formed for no reason. After all, the more dangerous a place was, the more likely it was for a peerless treasure to appear. This was the law of the world. After Zhuowen left the cave area, a strange green light suddenly burst out from the cave where Zhuowen had taken out the stone coffin. Then, the stone coffin covered with mysterious patterns automatically floated out of the cave. The patterns on the stone coffin's surface emitted a strange green light. Creak! The stone coffin's lid slowly opened. Then, from the gap of the coffin lid, a green withered arm stretched out. Someone else is here? I remember that the last person who came here was an old guy called Su Liang. That old guy was very clever. When he knew that he was no match for me, he immediately used an escape talisman to escape. It was a pity, but this time someone else is here. I won't let him escape. Kakik. A strange and unpleasant voice like that of an owl came out from the stone coffin. Chapter 2594. Green-haired Mummy Zhuowen stood in the deepest part of the cavern. It was an extremely spacious cavern. In this cavern, the evil qi had completely condensed into a substance. It was like a mountain pressing down on Zhuowen's body. If it weren't for Zhuowen's strong physical body, it would have been extremely strenuous for him to stay in this cavern. Moreover, the evil qi was very terrifying. Even experts in the two extremities of life and death would not be able to stay in this environment for long. Once one stayed in this place for a long time, they would probably go crazy. It was even possible that they would be torn into countless blood foam by this terrifying evil qi. In the center of the cavern, there was a black pool about 10 feet wide. This pool was very strange. It was not still, but constantly flowing and rolling. Moreover, every time it rolled, it would emit a ghostly wail. Zhuowen's eyes were solemn as he quietly looked at the pool. He could see that the water in the pool was not water at all. It was actually the pool of vengeful souls, which was formed by countless vengeful souls. Moreover, each vengeful soul was extremely powerful. Zhuowen's eyes revealed a dignified look. He could feel that this pool of vengeful souls was not simple. Zhuowen's consciousness carefully probed into the pool of vengeful souls. The moment his consciousness entered the pool, it was like a stone falling into a pool, causing 1,000 ripples. The endless vengeful souls in the pool of vengeful souls seemed to have gone crazy. They surged out and swept towards Zhuowen's consciousness, trying to extinguish Zhuowen's consciousness. Moreover, Zhuowen also found that the vengeful souls in the pool of vengeful souls seemed to have a limit. Once these vengeful souls wanted to follow his consciousness out of the pool and rush towards Zhuowen's body. When they reached the edge of the pool, the vengeful souls would let out mournful cries as if they had been stimulated by something, and then they would retreat back into the pool. It seems that there is some kind of power in the pool of vengeful souls that restricts these vengeful souls. I wonder if there is some kind of treasure hidden in the depths of the pool of vengeful souls. Zhuowen's eyes lit up, although it was just a guess. He was even more certain that there was definitely a precious treasure hidden in the depths of the pool of vengeful souls. Moreover, it was an extraordinary treasure. Zhuowen's spiritual consciousness was strong enough, but the moment he entered the pool of vengeful souls, his spiritual consciousness was immediately destroyed by these vengeful souls. If it weren't for the restriction of some kind of power in the pool of vengeful souls, these vengeful souls would probably have pestered Zhuowen and tried to kill him as well. From this, it could be seen that the vengeful spirits in the pool of vengeful souls were extremely terrifying. Once entangled with them, Zhuowen had no good way to get rid of them and suppress them. With such a group of terrifying, vengeful spirits guarding it, Zhuowen naturally guessed that there must be something good inside. Try again. Zhuowen once again derived his spiritual consciousness and used the soul kill. The terrifying spiritual consciousness was like a long spear that was thrown out, tearing through the air and making a terrifying hissing sound. Suddenly, many vengeful souls in the pool of vengeful souls were destroyed by Zhuowen's soul kill. Unfortunately, the vengeful souls were endless. Zhuowen relied on the soul kill technique and was only about 10 meters deep into the pool of vengeful souls before he was destroyed by the vengeful souls' attacks. Zhuowen's face was extremely pale, and there was a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. The destruction of his spiritual consciousness twice had caused Zhuowen a lot of internal injuries. It seems that my spiritual consciousness is still not strong enough. Otherwise, I can use my powerful spiritual consciousness to explore the pool of vengeful souls. Zhuowen glanced at the pool of vengeful souls. He didn't have the courage to enter the pool of vengeful souls alone. Before exploring the pool of vengeful souls clearly, it was not wise for him to rashly enter the pool of vengeful souls. Boom! Suddenly, a sense of crisis rose in Zhuowen's heart. Then, he heard a terrible explosion behind him. Zhuowen growled and immediately summoned the phagocytosis to protect his back. Then, he felt a terrible force behind him. He was sent flying with a groan. When Zhuowen steadied himself, he looked at the entrance in front of him with a gloomy expression. At the entrance, a 2-meter-tall mummy had appeared out of nowhere. The dried corpse was dark green in color, and its body was covered with lush green hair. It looked extremely disgusting. He, good reaction. You don't seem to be the human who came in last time. It seems that your strength is not bad. At least, you are stronger than the human who came in last time. The green-haired mummy sneered. Zhuowen's eyes were gloomy. The aura of the green-haired mummy gave him a familiar feeling. Did you come out from the sarcophagus just now? Zhuowen asked in a low voice. The green-haired mummy sneered and said, Your reaction is not bad. You actually guessed my origin. Zhuowen frowned and said indifferently, I didn't offend you. Why did you attack me? Zhuowen became vigilant in his heart. This green-furred corpse looked extremely strange. Especially after the previous exchange, Zhuowen knew that this green-furred corpse was very powerful. It was stronger than the Black Smoke King, but it should be weaker than the Heavenly Law Lord. The mummy sneered and said, You didn't offend me, but I'm really hungry. I really want to taste human flesh. Zhuowen's eyes narrowed and said coldly, With your strength, you can leave this place and find someone else, right? You didn't make a wise choice by coming to find me. The mummy's expression changed slightly, and the ferocious aura on its body surged. It said coldly, If I could leave, would I still stay in this damned place where I can't see the light of day? For countless epochs, I've seen this starry sky transform into mulberry fields and eras change. However, I've always been holed up in this corner, constantly being exhausted by that guy. My strength is constantly declining. When my strength is completely reduced to that of an ordinary person, I'll completely disappear. Shuowen's eyes moved. He didn't really understand what the mummy was saying. Moreover, this green-haired monster said that it had seen this starry sky transform into mulberry fields. Then, was this starry sky that the green-haired monster was talking about the 8 heavenly domains? Or was it the entire starry sky that included the Xianmi heavenly domain and the prehistoric heavenly domain? Boom! As soon as the mummy finished speaking, it threw a punch without any warning. Its speed had broken through the speed of sound. However, the moment the mummy's fist landed in front of Zhuowen, a rumbling explosion slowly sounded behind it. Zhuowen also threw a punch. This punch contained the strength of his main body and his doppelganger. It also surpassed the speed of sound. Rumble! The two fists collided and set off a terrifying shockwave. The space exploded, but the cave was as stable as Mount Tai under the aftermath of the collision. Zhuowen let out a muffled groan and retreated again. His back was almost pressed against the rock wall behind him before he managed to stabilize himself. Chapter 25, 95. Pool of Damned Souls. Wen's eyes were filled with shock. This green-furred corpse's physical body was a little too terrifying, wasn't it? After the original body and the doppelganger merged, they were actually at an absolute disadvantage in a head-on clash of physical bodies. Not bad, not bad. Your body is not bad. Unfortunately, you've met me. Even the 12 ancestral sorcerers are no match for me in terms of body. You're nothing. The green-haired mummy laughed sinisterly and took a step forward, leaving a deep footprint on the ground. He then charged towards Zhuowen like a gust of wind. Zhuowen's face turned ugly. He looked coldly at the green-haired mummy and immediately separated his clone. The clone revealed Devourer King's original body and smashed towards the green-haired mummy with phagocytosis. Bang! 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 The green-haired mummy collided with Devourer King. Zhuowen's face turned gloomy as he realized that Devourer King's clone was at a disadvantage. Zhuowen's original body took out the sacrificial death sword and joined forces with Devourer King's clone to attack the green-haired mummy. However, even with the addition of the sacrificial death sword, Devourer King's clone didn't gain the upper hand. He was still suppressed by the green-haired mummy. Zhuowen's original body formed hand seals and began to set up level 9 grand formations around him. What Zhuowen had set up was a level 9 array that could be completed in a short period of time. Zhuowen naturally gave up on those complicated level 9 grand formations. The battle wouldn't last long. If he were to set up those complicated grand formations, he would be out of his mind. After setting up the grand formations, Zhuowen immediately activated the grand formations. Streaks of formation energy turned into countless streams of light and blasted towards the green-haired mummy. Zhuowen's original body formed hand seals and pointed a finger at the void. He used the slaughtering finger of the tyrannical art of slaughtering Dao. The formless slaughtering finger traversed the void and landed in front of the green-haired mummy. The green-haired mummy was focused on the battle with Devourer King's clone. Coupled with the grand formations that Zhuowen had just set up, he didn't notice the slaughtering finger's appearance. The slaughtering finger was extremely fast. In an instant, it pierced through the air and landed on the green-haired mummy. Boom, 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 boom. The green-haired mummy was caught by surprise. The sacrificial death sword and Devourer King's clone's attack. The attacks of the sacrificial death sword and Devourer King's clone were. In an instant, the green-haired mummy, boom, the green-furred mummy heavily smashed into a nearby rock wall. However, Zhuowen quickly discovered that the green-furred mummy slowly stood up. It twisted its neck and looked at Zhuo-Wen with a grin. Not bad. Your strength is much stronger than that egg from last time. You actually managed to injure me. Zhuo-Wen felt a chill in his heart. He had used almost all of his trump cards, but the green-haired mummy was only slightly injured. What kind of monster was this? According to Zhuo-Wen's observation, the strength of this monster was only slightly stronger than Black Smoke King. However, the monster's body was so terrifying that there was simply no way to deal with it. Is this monster really an expert from the era of the 12 ancestral sorcerers of the untainted heavenly domain? But I don't know why he's trapped in this ominous vein. Zhuo-Wen thought to himself. He quietly retreated. The green-haired mummy's body was too strong. It was like an unkillable cockroach. If he were to fight this monster head-on, he would definitely be exhausted to death. But you've really angered me. The green-haired mummy's eyes shone with green light. An extremely terrifying aura suddenly erupted. In an instant, the surrounding air seemed to have frozen. Zhuo-Wen's gaze focused slightly, and he didn't hesitate in the slightest to execute the slaughtering Dao finger once more. The slaughtering Dao finger that condensed the heaven Dao shot out like an arrow that left the bow, and it heavily smashed onto the corpse. Rumble! The green-haired mummy roared angrily and was sent flying again. However, the green-haired mummy was in a much better state than before. It grabbed the slaughtering finger in the air and tore it apart. With a gentle twist, it landed on the ground. Then, the green-haired mummy bounced up and continued to rush toward Zhuo-Wen. Zhuo-Wen sighed softly and hurriedly rushed towards the exit. Unfortunately, he had underestimated the speed of the green-haired mummy. The mummy was much faster than him. It landed in front of him in advance and threw a punch at him. The Devourer King arrived in front of Zhuo-Wen in advance. He crossed his arms and tried to block the green-haired mummy's punch. Bang! The scales on the arms of the Devourer King's true body were blown away. Blood splattered everywhere as he was sent flying. Even his true body was sent flying backwards. The direction in which Zhuo-Wen was sent flying was the center of the pool of wronged souls. Not good. When Zhuo-Wen noticed the pool of wronged souls below him, he knew something was wrong. His profound death god energy surged out and tried to change the direction. However, the wronged souls in the pool of wronged souls pounced on Zhuo-Wen and pulled him into the pool of wronged souls. In just a short while, Zhuo-Wen disappeared into the pool of wronged souls. The green-haired mummy came to the edge of the pool of wronged souls. He looked at the countless wronged souls in the pool of wronged souls with a hesitant expression. What bad luck! I can't believe I let that kid fall into the pool. It seems like he's dead for sure. My efforts were in vain. Sigh, when will my days come to an end? I really don't want to stay in this godforsaken place any longer. The green-haired mummy looked up at the sky and sighed. Then he left the underground cave. Roar! Roar! The moment Zhuo-Wen fell into the pool of vengeful souls, countless vengeful souls wailed and howled as they charged at Zhuo-Wen, drowning him completely. The moment Zhuo-Wen fell into the pool of wronged souls, he summoned Devourer King back into his body. At the same time, the death sacrifice sword revolved around his body to resist the surrounding wronged souls. The sacrificial death sword was quite effective against things like vengeful spirits. It was able to protect Zhuo-Wen from being entangled by so many vengeful spirits. However, when Zhuo-Wen looked at the countless wronged souls around him, he felt bitter. The death sacrifice sword could protect him from being torn apart by the wronged souls. At the same time, he couldn't control the death sacrifice sword to walk out of the pool of wronged souls. The wronged souls were constantly dragging him into the depths of the pool of wronged souls. It was wishful thinking for him to go out. Originally, I didn't want to enter the pool of wronged souls. But because of that green-haired monster, I was pushed into the pool of wronged souls. It's true that whatever you're afraid of, it will come true, Zhuowen muttered bitterly. After Zhua, when swallowed several healing divine pills, he began to observe his surroundings. But what made him smile bitterly was that there was nothing but countless wronged souls around him. There wasn't even a medium for him to swim out of the pool of wronged souls. Do I have to keep sinking like this? What's down there? Zhuowen muttered with a gloomy look in his eyes. Although he knew that there might be a treasure at the bottom of the pool of wronged souls, it was only a guess. Even if there was, he needed to be alive to take it. Chapter 2596. At the bottom of the pool roar. If not for the protection of the sacrificial death sword, Zhuowen would have been devoured by the endless roar of roaring spirits. Why is the pool of vengeful souls so deep? It's been several hours, but I still feel like I'm sinking? Zhuowen muttered to himself. Realizing that something was wrong, his face turned ugly. Forget it. Since I have nothing to do, I'll try to extend my consciousness outside. Maybe I can use the pool of vengeful souls to refine my consciousness. Thinking of this, Zhuowen quietly extended his consciousness. However, as soon as his consciousness appeared in the protective range of the sacrificial death sword, the surrounding roaring spirits began to devour his consciousness frantically. Zhuowen groaned and spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was extremely pale. The feeling of having one's consciousness gnawed away was equivalent to having one's nerves uprooted. It was extremely painful. Fortunately, Zhuowen had countless treasures on him. After all, he had wiped out most of the experts of the palaces in the Taiqing immortal realm. Naturally, he had obtained a lot of spirit rings. The experts of the 100 palaces in the Taiqing immortal realm naturally had a lot of good things on them. In addition to Zhuowen's previous accumulation, it was not difficult to refine a divine pill that could restore one's consciousness. Although Zhuowen was not yet a heavenly law alchemist, he was becoming more and more proficient in alchemy by relying on the Emperor Elixir Fire's comprehension of alchemy. As the pool of vengeful souls continued to sink, Zhuowen not only used his consciousness to probe the outside from time to time, but also absorbed the experience of the Emperor Elixir Fire wholeheartedly. At the same time, he used the Emperor Elixir Furnace to refine divine pills that could restore one's consciousness. Zhuowen's alchemy skills improved rapidly. In just 3 months, he went from an idiot in alchemy to a level 9 alchemist. Now, as long as Zhuowen had the pill formula, it was easy for him to refine divine pills of level 9 or below. In particular, there were very few pill formulas for divine pills that could restore one's consciousness. However, the second elder of the Pill Tower had given Zhuowen many ancient books, which contained various pill formulas collected by the Pill Tower over the years. Among them, Zhuowen, of course, this was the divine pill formula. Of course, this was the divine pill formula. It divine chi pill was pill divine pill. Due to the rarity of divine pills that could restore one's divine soul, it was said that the value of this Qi Shin pill was comparable to an ordinary heavenly Tao grade divine pill. The raging alchemy fire burned in the imperial pill furnace. The imperial pill turtle had already left the imperial pill furnace and kept rolling its eyes at Zhuowen. The temperature of the alchemy fire was very high. Although the imperial pill turtle's body was terrifying, the feeling of being burned by the alchemy fire was not pleasant. It would not foolishly stay in the imperial pill furnace and be roasted by the fire. Suddenly, Zhuowen opened his eyes. Boundless light burst forth from his eyes. Then, he shouted in a low voice and slapped the surface of the imperial pill furnace with his right hand. Whoosh! The lid of the imperial pill furnace immediately flew up and out. Then, 12 pills flew out from the imperial pill furnace. Zhuowen took out a jade bottle and put all 12 pills inside. There were 12 pills in a furnace. This was Zhuowen's first time refining the divine qi pill. His luck was good, and he succeeded in refining all of them on the first try. Although looking at the luster on the surface of the qi shen pill, the quality was not particularly high. For a novice like Zhuowen to be able to succeed on his first attempt at refining the qi shen pill was definitely not bad. Although Zhuowen did not have many herbs for the divine qi pill, he still had the quantity of 50 furnaces. In other words, if he succeeded in refining the divine qi pill 50 times, Zhuowen would have a reserve of 600 divine qi pills. In the following time, Zhuowen did not stop refining divine qi pills. 3 months later, he successfully refined 40 furnaces of divine qi pills. As for the remaining 10 furnaces, they were naturally failures. After putting away the imperial pill furnace, Zhuowen found that he was still sinking in the pool of vengeful souls. One had to know that he spent 3 months studying alchemy techniques and 3 months refining divine qi pills. In total, half a year had passed. Even if he sank into the sea, he should have sunk to the bottom of the sea. However, he was still sinking in the pool of vengeful souls. How deep was the pool of vengeful souls? Zhuowen realized the seriousness of the situation. He knew that if he continued to sink, he would not have the chance to leave the pool of vengeful souls. Therefore, he had to save himself. Thinking of this, Zhuowen continued to use his divine sense to explore the outside. In the past 6 months, Zhuowen had been carefully probing with his divine sense. From the original few meters, his divine sense could now explore dozens of meters outside. His progress could be said to be not small. However, dozens of meters were simply a drop in the bucket for him. However, Zhuowen did not need to be so careful anymore because he had the divine qi pill. He could violently explore with his divine sense. Even if his spirit was damaged, he only needed to take the divine qi pill, and his spirit could quickly recover. Thinking of this, Zhuowen no longer had any scruples. His divine sense blasted out like a storm. At the same time, he also used the soul kill. Suddenly, a large number of vengeful souls in the surroundings were strangled and annihilated by the soul kill. However, there were too many vengeful souls. After the surrounding vengeful souls were strangled and formed an empty area, the vengeful souls behind rushed forward to fill the empty area. Zhuowen's divine sense was also gnawed away by these more ferocious, vengeful souls. Zhuowen spat out a mouthful of blood. He immediately took out the divine qi pill and swallowed it. Once again, he used the soul kill to strangle the surrounding vengeful souls. He took a step forward. After taking a few steps, he was surrounded by vengeful souls again. Zhuowen once again used the soul kill to clear the path. I've reached the bottom of the pool. In the process of using the soul kill, Zhuowen walked aimlessly. In this pool of vengeful souls, there were only vengeful souls. Zhuowen couldn't figure out the specific direction at all. He couldn't even tell up from down. When Zhuowen found that the surrounding vengeful souls began to thin out, he found that he had already fallen to the bottom of the pool. The bottom of the pool was no different from the bottom of an ordinary pool. There were fine sand and stones, but the number of vengeful souls was much less. Zhuowen's spirit had been strengthened a lot during this period of tempering. The vengeful souls at the bottom of the pool did not pose much of a threat to him. Chapter 2597. Mysterious Big Banner walking at the bottom of the pool, Zhuowen's pressure was reduced by a lot. At the same time, he was very curious about what was in front of him that could make these fearless, vengeful spirits so afraid. With this curiosity, Zhuowen kept moving forward and finally stopped in front of a reef that was as tall as 2 people. This reef stood at the bottom of the pool. all alone, and looked very unique. But there was not a single vengeful spirit here, just a reef standing there. Zhuowen felt strange, and immediately walked to the reef to observe carefully. After a long time, he did not find anything, and just thought that it was just an ordinary reef. Therefore, Zhuowen probed the reef with his divine sense, wanting to explore the reef. But the moment his divine sense probed into the interior of the reef, his face suddenly changed. This was because he discovered that his divine sense was like entering a bottomless pit. His divine sense was constantly being sucked in by the things inside the reef. What's going on? Zhuowen's face was filled with panic. He wanted to withdraw his spiritual sense, but found that it was not there. And when he wanted to cut off his spiritual sense, he found that it was still useless. This reef had a mysterious force that pulled Zhuowen's spiritual sense, constantly pulling his spiritual sense into the depths and absorbing it. Bang, bang, bang. Zhuowen even found that the soul constellations in his soul space were constantly shattering and turning into dust. The speed of the soul constellations shattering was too fast. In the blink of an eye, 1/10 of the soul constellations had already shattered. Zhuowen was overwhelmed with shock. This was simply too terrifying. He knew very well that if all his soul constellations shattered, he would very likely become an idiot. Zhuowen roared and began to swallow the soul-unifying pill. He hoped that with the help of the soul-unifying pill, he could slow down the speed of the shattering of the soul constellations. The soul-unifying pill did have some effect, but the speed of slowing it down could not keep up with the speed of the shattering of the soul constellations. Zhuowen gritted his teeth and took out bottles of soul-unifying pill. Then he began to gulp down bottles of soul-unifying pill like a madman. 3 days later, Zhuowen lay paralyzed on the ground, his face pale and bloodless. In the end, there was only one divine soul constellation left in his divine soul space, and there were only 10 bottles of unifying spirit pills left, and the suction force from the reef finally stopped. Zhuowen wanted to cry, but had no tears. Right now, he was extremely weak, and his soul was permanently damaged. He knew very well that if he didn't have a heaven-defying item to recover his soul, then his soul would only be at its current level, barely reaching the average level of a void sky cultivator. It's over. I'm afraid I won't be able to get out with this little bit of divine soul. Zhuowen smiled helplessly. He looked at the reef in front of him with a hint of fear. He still didn't know what was inside the reef to be able to absorb his soul. If it weren't for Zhuowen's divine soul being much stronger than ordinary cultivators, coupled with the Qi spirit pill, Zhuowen would have really fallen here. Kacha! Suddenly, countless cracks appeared on the surface of the black reef, and then it exploded with a loud bang. Immediately after, Zhuowen saw a large banner standing upright in the middle of the shattered reef. This large banner was about 1 meter long, and on the banner body, there was a seemingly substantial fiendish aura. It seemed to want to destroy the chaos and reopen the world. On the surface of the banner, there was a picture of a towering giant holding the heaven-splitting divine axe, splitting the heavens and splitting the earth. Outside the banner, there were mysterious prophecies revolving around it, and inside the banner, there was a heaven-splitting talisman. This large banner looked extremely shabby on the surface, as if it was found in a pile of junk. However, the patterns drawn on the banner body and the banner body were extremely exquisite, as if they weren't drawn, but there was some kind of Tao charm naturally imprinted on the banner. Zhuowen sensed an extremely familiar aura from the banner. This aura was the same one that had come from the reef rock, the terrifying power that had devoured his soul. What is the origin of this large banner? It was actually devouring my divine soul before, and the surrounding vengeful spirits seemed to be very afraid of this large banner. Could it be that the origin of this large banner is extraordinary? Zhuowen muttered to himself, but he didn't dare to go forward. This large banner was too strange. His divine soul was almost destroyed just now, and he still had some lingering fear. Whoosh! Just as Zhuowen didn't dare to approach the large banner, Zhuowen was surprised to find that the large banner turned into a black smoke with a whoosh and directly drilled into Zhuowen's forehead. It was so fast that Zhuowen didn't even have time to react. Zhuowen was dumbfounded. Before he could react, he felt a heart-wrenching pain coming from his divine soul. He had no choice but to hold his head with both hands and constantly roll left and right. He only felt a splitting headache. The large banner had already appeared in his divine soul space, and then he discovered in despair that the last divine soul constellation in his divine soul space had been crushed. Moreover, the huge divine soul space that was like a starry sky was actually being stirred up by the large banner. Countless cracks appeared on the surface of the divine soul space, as if it would collapse at any time. No, Zhuowen let out a loud roar and fell to the ground, completely fainting. While Zhuowen was unconscious, the large banner was still wreaking havoc in Zhuowen's divine soul space, and it had no intention of letting Zhuowen go. After a while, Zhuowen's divine soul space was crushed, and the large banner released a white smoke that enveloped Zhuowen's shattered divine soul space. If one looked carefully, this white smoke was completely different from ordinary white smoke. This white smoke seemed to be solid. It was milky white, just like milk. This white smoke dissolved the shattered divine soul space, and in the end, it returned to chaos. The large banner was in the center of the chaos, silently hanging there, motionless. The sacrificial death sword that had been hiding in the center of Zhuowen's divine soul trembled. It hid in a remote corner, not daring to approach the large banner at all. It was as if the large banner was as terrifying as a flood. My head hurts. What's wrong with me? Zhuowen slowly opened his eyes. He only felt a splitting headache. He couldn't help but rub his forehead, and at the same time, he began to recall what had happened to him. Soon, he thought of the large banner. It was because of that banner that he had fainted. My divine soul space is gone. When Zhuowen began to check his divine soul space, he was completely stunned. The divine soul space that had been like a boundless starry sky had now been replaced by a mass of chaotic white smoke. Chapter 2598. Induction. What the hell is going on? My spiritual space has been taken over by this flag. Zhuowen's eyes narrowed in disbelief. Moreover, Zhuowen also discovered that this flag had no intention of harming him. After occupying his spiritual space, it did not do anything else. Moreover, Zhuowen also discovered that although his spiritual constellation had been destroyed, the core of his spiritual soul was protected by this white smoke. Moreover, this white smoke contained a strange energy that was actually repairing and strengthening his spiritual soul. Moreover, Zhuowen also discovered that his spiritual sense was many times stronger than before. Originally, he could only extend it to 12 meters in this pool of vengeful souls. However, he now felt that his spiritual sense could pierce through the entire pool of vengeful souls. The scene in the hole above the pool of vengeful souls was even clearer in his spiritual sense. Since when did my spiritual soul become so powerful? Could it be because of this flag? Zhuowen was dumbfounded. However, he soon thought of the reason. He found it unbelievable. Now, even Zhuowen himself could not estimate the strength of his spiritual soul. He only felt that his spiritual soul was very, very powerful. However, he was not sure how powerful it was. However, Zhuowen soon became suspicious. Why did that flag stay in his spiritual space? Moreover, his powerful spiritual soul was given to him by this flag. Could it be because this flag absorbed the power of my spiritual soul? Then, for some unknown reason, my spiritual soul merged with this flag. This flag replaced my spiritual space, or rather, it became a substitute for my spiritual space. Zhuowen thought of a possibility. Although he felt that this possibility was ridiculous, it was the only possibility that could explain why this flag followed him. Moreover, this flag could exist in his spiritual soul. It should also be a Tao-proving divine tool. Moreover, it was not an ordinary Tao-proving divine tool. After all, the sacrifice death sword was trembling in fear under the pressure of the banner, not daring to move at all. It could be seen that the level of the banner was much higher than the sacrifice death sword. The fact that this flag can exist in the depths of the pool of vengeful souls, and the fact that the countless vengeful souls in the pool of vengeful souls don't dare to approach it, and the fact that those vengeful souls are extremely fearful of this flag shows that it has an extraordinary origin. Zhuowen pondered to himself as a bright light appeared in his eyes. He knew that if these vengeful spirits were afraid of the banner, and his soul had inexplicably fused with the banner, didn't that mean that these vengeful spirits would be afraid of him as well? When he thought of this, Zhuowen was eager to give it a try. Soon after, he stomped his right foot and flew towards the top of the pool of vengeful spirits. 100 meters above the bottom, countless vengeful spirits were wandering around. These vengeful spirits were like rootless duckweed, gathering and howling. Although the vengeful spirits were extremely rampant, they did not dare to approach within 100 meters of the ground. Although they did not have much intelligence, they still had instincts. They were extremely fearful of the banner hidden in the reef at the bottom of the pool, and their instincts drove them to stay away from the vengeful spirits. When Zhuowen flew 100 meters, he naturally arrived in the circle of the wandering vengeful spirits. Roar! Roar! When Zhuowen appeared, these vengeful spirits swarmed towards Zhuowen. Zhuowen's expression changed slightly. He did not expect that after his spirit had merged with the banner, it would not pose any threat to these vengeful spirits. But soon, Zhuowen discovered that the vengeful spirits pouncing towards him revealed looks of fear, and immediately scattered in disarray. In a short while, the 100-meter radius around Zhuowen seemed to have become a vacuum. There was not a single vengeful spirit in sight. It seems that it really is effective. Zhuowen muttered in a low voice and rushed towards the top of the pool of vengeful souls without any scruples. His speed was extremely fast. Any vengeful spirit that encountered Zhuowen above was like a mouse that had encountered a cat. They fled one after another, not daring to approach Zhuowen. In this way, Zhuowen was like a fish in water, rushing upwards at an extremely fast speed. It took Zhuowen 3 days to successfully jump out of the pool of vengeful souls and arrive at the previous cave. Although Zhuowen had been sinking in the pool of vengeful souls for half a year, his sinking speed was extremely slow, like that of a turtle. But now his speed was thousands of times faster than his sinking speed. It was not surprising that he had left the pool of vengeful souls in 3 days. After jumping out of the pool of vengeful souls, Zhuowen's eyes were extremely vigilant. He looked around and found that the green-haired mummy was not in the cave. It had obviously left this place. However, Zhuowen did not relax his vigilance. After confirming that the green-haired mummy was not inside, Zhuowen let out a sigh of relief. Immediately, his vast divine sense began to scan the entire underground world of the peerless ominous vein. After combining with the mysterious banner, Zhuowen's divine sense was unprecedentedly powerful. Originally, his divine sense was not enough to scan the entire peerless ominous vein thoroughly. After all, the peerless ominous vein contained a terrifying demonic aura which hindered the detection of divine sense. Zhuowen's divine sense was hindered by the demonic aura, so he could not detect the specific situation around him. But now, his divine sense was too powerful. Although the baleful qi was quite a hindrance to his divine sense, under his powerful divine sense, It was completely negligible. Zhuowen's divine sense spread throughout the entire peerless, ominous vein, divided into countless branches, and explored every nook and cranny of the ominous vein. He did not forget the purpose of entering the peerless, ominous vein this time. It was to find the sorcerer tribe's secret book that Su Liang had hidden in the ominous vein. Previously, when he entered the peerless, ominous vein, although he explored it quite carefully, the peerless, ominous vein was too big and too complicated, and there were too many passages. He did not know which passage Su Liang had hidden the sorcerer tribe's secret book. After Zhuowen entered the main passage from the branch passage, he directly entered the deepest part of the peerless, ominous vein. Originally, he planned to explore the deepest part first, and then search the passages one by one. However, he did not expect to encounter the green-haired mummy and be thrown into the pool of vengeful souls by it. If it were not for Zhuowen's great luck, he would have been a member of the pool of vengeful souls at this moment. It's actually there? It's hidden really well. Zhuowen exclaimed softly, and a trace of surprise appeared in his eyes. In the process of exploring the entire peerless, ominous vein, he finally found the sorcerer tribe's secret book that was buried in the peerless, ominous vein. The moment he found the sorcerer tribe's secret book, Zhuowen rushed out and rushed towards the location of the sorcerer tribe's secret book. The moment Zhuowen's divine sense spread throughout the entire peerless, ominous vein, among the numerous caves in the main passage, one of the caves emitted a strange green light. Then, in the cave, a huge stone coffin floated out. The surface of the stone coffin was engraved with many lines, and at this moment, it was emitting a green light. Bang! The lid of the stone coffin was directly blown away, and then a withered arm suddenly stretched out. The green-haired mummy's eyes were filled with surprise and uncertainty. Did I sense it wrongly? Why did the aura of the divine sense just now have the aura of that thing? Moreover, I also felt the aura of that human in this divine sense. What's going on? The green-haired mummy muttered to itself, and its eyes emitted a strange green light. Deng, deng, deng. Chapter 25:99. Blood-stained horn. As the footsteps approached, the green-haired mummy's face turned gloomy. It was because it saw a vague figure in the depths of the passage. With the terrifying eyesight of the green-haired mummy, it recognized at a glance that the figure was the human who had been thrown into the pool of vengeful souls. The human is not dead. What's going on? The green-haired mummy was shocked and bewildered. Even it was extremely afraid of the pool of vengeful souls in the deepest part of the ominous spirit vein. If it fell into the pool of vengeful souls, although it might not die, it knew that it would not be able to leave the pool of vengeful souls, because there was something in the pool of vengeful souls that terrified it, and it happened to be the culprit that had suppressed it in the ominous spirit vein. In its opinion, since the human had fallen into the pool of vengeful souls, it was certain that the human was dead. Even if the human was not dead, he must be trapped at the bottom of the pool of vengeful souls. But now, not only was the human alive in front of it, but there was also a vague aura on the human's body that made the mummy wary. This aura made the green-haired mummy's eyes filled with surprise and doubt. Zhuowen also saw the green-haired mummy in front of him. His eyes suddenly became serious, and his heart was full of vigilance. The green-haired mummy's body was too terrifying. At present, Zhuowen was not confident that he could defeat it. I can't fight this monster head-on. Its body is too terrifying. I'm definitely not its opponent. I have to find a way to avoid it and leave the passage. Zhuowen had a headache, but he soon found that the green-haired mummy in front of him seemed to be hesitating. Moreover, he also found a trace of fear in the green-haired mummy's green eyes. If it was before, the green-haired mummy would have said something ruthless and then pounced on him without hesitation. But now it did not do so. Zhuowen soon thought of the reason. Maybe the green-haired mummy was afraid of the mysterious banner in his divine soul. Thinking of this, Zhuowen sighed in his heart. If the green-haired mummy was afraid of the mysterious banner, it would be best. In this way, when he escaped, the green-haired mummy would not attack him. Whoosh! At this moment, Zhuowen moved. He was like an arrow that left the bow, and he suddenly flashed explosively towards the front. Shockingly, he went around the green-furred mummy, and he didn't intend to go head-on against it, and he wanted to avoid it. The green-furred corpse's glossy green eyes flickered. When Zhuowen passed by it, it let out a low roar, and a withered green arm suddenly reached out and grabbed at Zhuowen's left chest. Zhuowen let out a cold snort. A wisp of gray gas flew out from between his eyebrows and turned into a sacrificial sword, slashing towards the green-haired mummy's arm. Ding! The sound of metal clashing rang out. The sacrificial death sword, which was already a heavenly Tao-level divine artifact, was unable to leave a single mark on the green-furred corpse's arm. Bang! The sacrificial death sword was deflected away, and the green arm was like a furious dragon rushing towards Zhuowen. Zhuowen's eyes were gloomy. He immediately used Soul Kill. Now, his divine soul was extremely powerful. The power of the Soul Kill was definitely hundreds or thousands of times stronger than before. The invisible power of divine sense turned into a terrifying spiral force, stirring up the green-furred mummy's divine soul unceremoniously. The green-furred mummy covered its head, and its eyes were filled with pain. The right hand that was about to strike out also froze. Zhuowen took advantage of this gap and punched the green-furred mummy's chest. One had to admit that the green-furred mummy's body was really terrifying. When Zhuowen punched it, he actually felt a faint pain in his fist. It should be known that his original body had been soaked in the blood of a real dragon, and his doppelganger had the bloodline of the King Devourer. With the two combined, his body had reached an extremely terrifying level. Zhuowen, who had such a powerful body, actually felt a faint pain in his fist when he punched the green-furred mummy. It could be seen that the strength of the green-furred mummy's body was far beyond Zhuowen's imagination. Although the green-furred mummy wasn't injured, it was still thrown to the ground by Zhuowen's punch. Zhuowen took advantage of this opportunity to turn into a shadow and disappear in front of the passage. Although he could feel that the green-furred mummy was now wary of him, he also knew that the gap between him and the green-furred mummy was too big, especially that terrifying body. Even if the green-furred mummy stood there and let him hit it, Zhuowen wouldn't be able to do anything to it. When Zhuowen's figure completely disappeared, the green-furred mummy got up from the ground. Its eyes revealed a trace of throbbing and a touch of unprecedented excitement. The aura of the banner is on this boy. But how is that possible? The banner has great wisdom. Why would it choose such an inconspicuous boy? But this is also good. Without the suppression of the banner, the suppression of this peerless, ominous vein will weaken. When the time comes, I will have more than enough time to leave this ominous vein. The green-furred mummy thought of something and couldn't help but reveal a trace of a smile, especially when it thought that it could leave this ominous vein that had trapped it for countless years. The smile on the corners of the mummy's mouth became even wider. Zhuowen was very fast. In a short while, he came to the intersection of countless branches. He didn't even think about it and chose the left branch. Zhuowen had already memorized the location where Su Liang had hidden the sorcerer's secret codex. Therefore, at this complicated intersection, he didn't hesitate to choose the right one. After running for a long time in this branch, Zhuowen's divine sense also checked behind him from time to time. After finding that the green-furred mummy didn't chase after him, Zhuowen relaxed a lot. Soon, Zhuowen found Su Liang's original hiding place. It was a very inconspicuous and remote corner of the rock wall. After digging through the rock wall, Zhuowen quickly found a spiritual ring. This spiritual ring was very ordinary, but there were many restrictions on its surface. Moreover, they weren't simple restrictions. Zhuowen's eyes were serious. He made a gesture with his right hand and spent several hours to completely break the complicated restrictions on the surface of the spiritual ring. There was only one thing in the spiritual ring. It was a blood-stained horn. The horn was simple and unadorned. It looked ordinary, but Zhuowen could feel an unusual aura from it. Nothing else. After Zhuowen took out the horn, his divine sense checked the spiritual ring again. He found that other than this horn, there was nothing else in the spiritual ring. This made Zhuowen frown. In his opinion, the sorcerer's secret codex should be recorded in a jade slip. However, he didn't find any jade slip in the spiritual ring. Chapter 2600. Giant, try using your consciousness. Zhuowen expanded his consciousness and began to check the horn. He felt that the horn was not ordinary, and that the sorcerer tribe's secret manual might be hidden in the horn. Suddenly, when Zhuowen's divine sense landed on the tip of the horn, he felt a strange suction force. It was actually absorbing his divine sense. A mere human ant in the death realm dares to use your consciousness to check my horn. You really don't know your place. Suddenly, a loud consciousness appeared in Zhuowen's spiritual soul. Then, Zhuowen realized that a black gas was condensing in his spiritual soul and turned into a ferocious ghost face. It pounced on Zhuowen's soul. The power of the ghost face was so great that it seemed to be able to swallow the world. Zhuowen's spiritual soul was actually shaken by the ghost face's consciousness. At this moment, Zhuowen's soul was much more powerful than before. However, under the influence of the ghost face's divine sense, it didn't seem to have much effect. In fact, it was even faintly suppressed. This made Zhuowen extremely shocked. He knew that the ghost face's divine sense was extraordinary. What are you? Zhuowen's face was gloomy. He wanted to find out the origin of the ghost face's consciousness. Are you trying to trick me? Do you think I will be fooled? I will first devour your soul and occupy your body. Then, I will take the sorcerer tribe's secret manual for myself. You have to know that I have suffered a lot for the sorcerer tribe's secret manual. Today, I will finally get what I want. The ghost face's consciousness laughed loudly. His voice was filled with joy and mockery. However, his laughter did not last long. He let out a terrified cry. As the ghost face's spiritual will continue to penetrate deeper into Zhuowen's soul, it finally reached the deepest part, where it saw the huge banner. The ghost face's consciousness looked as if he had seen a ghost. He screamed and quickly retreated. Unfortunately, the moment the ghost face's consciousness retreated, the banner suddenly moved. The mysterious banner rolled up, blotting out the sun as it shot out, immediately blocking the path of retreat of the ghost face's divine sense. The ghost face's consciousness looked at the mysterious banner behind him. The fear in his eyes grew stronger and stronger. Finally, he screamed, "Why is there such a thing in your spiritual soul? This thing should not be here. How is it possible?" Zhuowen looked at the ghost face's terrified expression in shock. He quickly asked, "Do you know the origin of this banner?" The ghost face's spiritual soul revealed a look of astonishment. He did not expect this human cultivator did not know the origin of the banner. Was he teasing him? But soon, the ghost face's spiritual sense did not care whether Zhuowen was teasing him or not. The large banner had already attacked. The banner's was ghost face's spiritual soul, and the ghost face's spiritual soul was screaming. The ghost face's divine sense resisted with all its might and even unleashed a terrifying attack. Even in Zhuowen's eyes, such an attack was earth-shattering, but in front of the mysterious banner, it was like a chicken or a dog, unable to withstand a single blow. In the end, the ghost face's spiritual soul was completely absorbed by the mysterious banner. Zhuowen was shocked. The ghost face's spiritual soul was extremely terrifying. If it was not for the mysterious banner, Zhuowen knew that with his current spiritual soul, he would not be able to withstand the attack of the ghost face's spiritual soul. He might even be successfully possessed by the ghost face's spiritual soul. However, as soon as the mysterious banner appeared, it was able to easily deal with the ghostly face's spiritual sense. How could Zhuowen not be surprised? It's a pity that the mysterious banner absorbed the ghostly face's divine sense before it could reveal the origin of the mysterious banner. What a pity! Zhuowen shook his head and sighed, helplessly. Zhuowen was very curious about the mysterious banner that could make the green-haired mummy afraid. He wanted to know the origin of the banner. Zhuowen picked up the blood-stained horn on the ground and muttered to himself, from the words of the ghost face's spiritual soul, "It's not difficult to guess that the sorcerer tribe's secret manual is hidden in the horn." Zhuowen's divine sense once again entered the horn through the tip of the horn. Soon, he discovered a whole new world. Inside the horn, Zhuowen discovered that he was no longer in the pitch-black cave of ominous veins. Instead, he was standing in a vast expanse of space. This starry sky was more solid, real, and vast than the starry sky of the eight heavens. In particular, the starry sky energy that came from this starry sky was much stronger than that of the eight heavens. It was even stronger than that of the primitive heavens. However, this starry sky was chaotic. Although it had the embryonic form of a starry sky, it was not a complete starry sky. It was more like a starry sky that had just been born. However, there was no doubt that this starry sky, which was still in chaos, contained extremely powerful starry sky energy. It was the most primitive energy. In this chaos, Zhuowen found that a giant figure had appeared in the distance. This figure was so tall that Zhuowen could only see the man's abdomen when he looked up. When he wanted to look up, he found that it was chaotic, and he could not see the man's body above his abdomen. This peerless giant held an ancient giant axe with both hands. He only raised his right hand and chopped down. Then, the chaos in the starry sky was split open, and the starry sky became clearer. Boom, boom. Zhuowen saw this unprecedented giant continuously chopping down with the giant axe. Its speed was so fast that even Zhuowen's reaction could not keep up with the giant's speed. It was too fast. Every time the giant chopped down with the axe, the chaos in the starry sky became clearer, as if it was evolving into a real starry sky. Roar. In the end, the giant roared at the sky. That roar seemed to come from ancient times, from the endless void. It was distant, yet close at the same time. It seemed to grow and multiply endlessly. Zhuowen almost fainted from this roar. Blood flowed out of his 7 orifices. However, Zhuowen's willpower was astonishing, and he forcibly endured it. His eyes were dyed red as he stared fixedly at the indomitable giant. At this moment, the chaotic starry sky finally dispersed completely. Zhuowen saw the true face of this starry sky and the peerless giant. Even though the chaos was dispelled, the giant was too tall. Zhuowen still could not see the giant's face. He could only see the giant's shoulders. The giant's face was covered by the broad shoulders. When the chaos became clear, the giant roared again. The giant chopped up with the giant axe in both hands. It was as if there was something above the starry sky. Zhuowen raised his head and looked at the sky. There was only an endless void and nothing else. The 2 giant axe shadows rushed into the sky. They were extremely fast. They broke through the starry sky and disappeared into the endless darkness. In the endless darkness, Zhuowen's red eyes vaguely saw the two giant axe shadows being crushed by some kind of power. After the axe shadows were crushed, this inexplicable power quickly fell from the endless void. It was as if it came from another world.